It's episode 313 of The Platformers, a show about games and nerd culture, and I'm your host, Brian Barnett.
I am an unruly shade, Kris Cornelisse.
I'm just a guy. My name is Will Berger. Hi.
I'm Lucas White, and we're going to try not to knock the amiibo off my desk this time.
We're just normal men.
Just don't, except
Chris, so
who is in
close
fact
to
a
doing
shade.
You were so
An
close to
unruly
doing that?
shade at that.
Yeah,
I was about to be, I'm an innocent man. I stopped.
we're just normal men.
Law-abiding
We're just
citizen.
innocent men.
We're just innocent men.
So good.
Okay, I'm missing a context here.
Oh my god, you haven't seen that?
I'm sure I have. It sounds familiar to me, but I just can't place it at this moment.
We're just normal men. What do you mean? We're just innocent men.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways.
What's it from, though?
Remind
me what it's from.
It's from some British show. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. I think I remember.
There's
Puppet being weird.
There's a woman talking to like a little dog puppet. Yeah. Anyways, it's good. And you know what else is good? Video games.
I have no idea. Well, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Well, the two games
As a,
that
net,
I've been
as a
playing.
net neutral, video games are probably okay.
Yeah,
There you go.
listen, I've given some scores in my day.
By volume, video games are not great, but if you are selective, they're exceptional.
Yeah, sure.
mean,
if
if
you
you
have
go-
taste, yes, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
If you go entirely by my IGN list, which is a single review, then video games are strictly mid.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I've given one score on IGN and it was a 5 out of 10. What can you say?
Listen, I have
the camera.
given many scores. The highest score a 9. Probably the most average, like literally the most frequent one, like a 6, 5 somewhere, 5 through 7.
Into the forbidden numbers,
the
as they used
mid
to call it.
the mid zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you enter the mid zone, you never come back. And people never let you forget that you rated
Shut
that
up.
game like a 5.
The Bermuda Triangle of mediocrity. Yeah.
You reach the mid zone and you hang out with Timo.
This
Sorry, I
mids.
had to throw shade
only
at him.
mids.
I would just block.
I would simply block. This podcast has been sponsored by The Triangle, which aired on Sci-Fi like 15 years ago, and is actually surprisingly good television show that you can get on Amazon for like $10. Just putting it out there. They are in no way sponsoring us, but I am getting the good word.
Speaking of
Triangles.
television shows, will be happy to hear that I have once again regained access to Netflix, which means Black Sails is just around the corner for me. So
Greatest television show of the last 10 years.
oh
It's,
no,
it's been in the back of my mind since you mentioned it the other week, and I keep going, yeah, I'm not really feeling specific video games at the moment. Maybe I'll just go watch that. I should watch
Black
that.
Sails goes so fucking hard. Listen, I want to the audience here. If you haven't seen Black Sails, one, it's on Netflix in the US. You have no fucking excuse. 2,
I do.
yeah, Chris.
I have other means. It's fine.
Chris, listen, this is a show about piracy, okay? I'm not saying that should.
It's thematic that I pirate the pirate show. You're
Yes, yeah, I
Exactly.
agree. Yes. You should Jack Sparrow that shit. Is all I'm saying.
but you have heard
Alright.
of me.
right. Yar har, yar har.
But if you have not seen Black Sails, you should definitely make it a priority in your life to see Black Sails. I will tell you, the first episode probably the weakest, but still good. It just has to do a lot of like setup for everything that happens.
Yeah.
By the time you get to, I want to say episode 4 of season 1, you should be hooked. The show only continues to improve. It's 38 episodes. It gets in, does its business, get out. It's what Game of Thrones should have been. It respects its audience.
Also, if none of that appeals to you, this show is chock-a-block full of attractive people.
That was where I was going to go next. Yeah, it might have the most attractive cast to ever grace a TV series. Everybody on that show is hot. It's a bisexual feast. Like, it's just... Everyone in that show is hot. Everyone on that show is stacked. You are going to see things that will remain in your brain until you're dead, and they will be good. Also, we get some full frontal male nudity, which I appreciate. I am all about equality. So, watch Black Sails. It fucking rules. It's also a prequel to Treasure Island, so...
Yeah. Also, Mom Joe in the chat says, I've watched this podcast before. There are no innocent men here. Which is fair.
You know what? That's controversial and brave, and you're right.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm gonna respond to this directly. I was found not guilty.
Yes.
Which I know is
acquitted
not
of all charges.
Yeah, the jury, like, I walked out of that courtroom, I adjusted my tie, I brushed the dirt off my shoulder. I felt real fucking good that day. So, well, was I innocent? Well, innocent and not guilty are two different phrases. They exist.
Well, I'll put it this way. Will is going to he's got a book coming out called If I Did It.
Here's how I would have done it.
Listen, I would never be so foolish as to sign my name to a confession.
Yeah.
So,
but a hypothetical
and
confession, depends on the numbers on the check.
Anyways, all that to say, video games are in a constant state of flux, but I've been playing...
Sometimes that state of flux is bad, like recently. Anyway,
yeah. Or it could be good, like recently for me. So I've been playing 2 games, and I'm going to get into one right off the bat. I beat, this week, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So,
what a video game, bro. What a video game.
It took me about 99 hours to finish it.
Oh, that's not even a single infinite wealth. Come on.
I did
Chris
is like,
most that is a 0.5 infinite wealth at best.
Yeah. I did most everything. I completed intel on every area in the game, but I did not finish every quest, and I did not do there's a point of no return in the game where they open up some other things that you can do, and at that point I did not do any of those things. They let you explore a little bit more of the open world. They let you revisit and do some other things. They open up some more challenges in the VR front, but I had completed everything up until that point. I completed the, there's a set of mini quests. I guess that's implied by saying that I completed every area. I completed intel on every area. That I did all of the proto-relic things. And then I completed the thing at the end of that, which was really fun and challenging. And I'm not going to spoil it.
Listen,
I might. What?
We should deep dive remake.
I'm thinking about it. I would be open to it.
Listen, I have thoughts, and they start with, this is the bravest thing that Square has ever done in its entire existence, and end with, why aren't more developers willing to look at their sacred cows and be like, what if we just hit the bong as hard as you possibly can? What if we just, I don't know, fucking brought in some ghosts and shit?
Because then Microsoft will lay off their studio. That's why.
Chris, we're not to that part of the show yet.
We are not to that part. Let's tread water a little bit longer.
Keep the powder dry. Keep the powder dry. Got it.
Listen, you got to get the audience a little bit lubed up. You know what I'm saying? We can't go dry like that. That's crazy. Lucas over here, just smiling when I say deranged shit. I appreciate it. Lucas is such a straight man to this podcast, degeneracy.
It is amazing. It is astonishing the degree to which you can come across as a straight man if you just don't say anything. You literally, you don't have to be.
Is free,
Yeah, you don't have to be. You don't have to be the straight man.
You didn't have to post that.
But if you don't say anything, people will just kind of assume you are, and that's I respect.
It could be worse than all of you combined, and you'll never know.
Listen, I have actually spent time with Lucas in real life, and I'm here to tell you that he is absolutely as degenerate as the rest of us. However, on the show, he has a very specific role to play, and my man has read his script for the week, so
he knows the lines.
He knows his lines. He's got that shit-eating grin. I think I almost made him spit out his drink. I'm really sad that I couldn't quite get there. Next time.
We'll see.
I think I'm the only one. I think I'm the only one who's gotten Lucas to do a spit take so far. That was a good day.
That sounds right.
That sounds like a challenge, honestly. Although I feel like, Brian, you're a little bit more buttoned up sometimes than I am, where I will just say things. At a certain point, especially after you spend time with me in real life, you're like, Will is just going to say some shit.
Yeah.
The power of the moment. Just...
to bring it all back, you're basically doing what Square Enix did when they sat back, took the bong hit, and went,
Yeah.
why don't we do a secret sequel to FF7 as a remake?
Yeah.
What if having children mattered a lot? What if having children was actually everything?
What if Ever Crisis was important?
What if all of it mattered? Like,
What if all that compilation, that everything, was janky and weird and not good? By the way, all of it comes back and it all matters.
Yeah.
Ever
Crisis, Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, all of it.
I was about to say, Yoshinori Kitase is in that office banging on the table like, when are we fucking doing the Dirge of Cerberus remake, you fuck? Right? Like,
they did the Crisis Core remaster ahead of time because they're like, hey, by the way, this is going to be important. Like, we need eyes on this. I'm play this.
I'm going to be honest with you. I would, based on how Rebirth went, I would not be surprised at all if we get a Dirge of Cerberus remake before the final game in the series.
Oh, yeah. At the very least, you're going to get a remaster, like the Crisis Core one.
Listen,
they're going to want eyes on all of it. That's the point.
Lucas being the most degenerate person here, who's actually like deep dove into that compilation and written about it, because he's a sicko on a level that I cannot fathom but aspire to.
I feel like Nomura
Will Berger
and Nojima
aspiring to the
this,
unfathomable.
Yes. I wish to be not only something that you don't perceive, but you cannot perceive, like an eldritch horror.
Schrodinger's cat. Yeah, I feel like Nojima and Nomura have just had this like pact since like I don't know how long they've known each other, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were like buddies in college or some shit. They're just like, all right, who can make the most absurd scattershot of like transmedia bullshit with our like franchise, and then tie it all together and come out, successful on the other end. Like whoever wins before, one
the
of us
answer is
dies or
Nojima.
Yeah, I feel like
he's pulled ahead in recent years.
Well, it's because even the good Kingdom Hearts stuff he was on, so
I feel like they have like a standing bet, like to Lucas's point, right? Like this is just a thing that we're gonna do. And in fairness to Nomura, he has cooked.
Yes,
he has cooked.
I will.
Yeah.
People like to talk trash about Nomura, but he is responsible for some. He's responsible for some really awesome stuff. So
yeah, I'll give him that.
The funniest thing I've ever
he pushed for Neo Twoey, so I can't completely hate him. What can I say?
Yeah, like the funniest thing I've ever seen is like Nomura in an interview being like, "Yeah, people will be like, that's so Nomura," and he's like, "But I didn't even have anything to do with that." Right? He's just like flabbergasted that people are.
He's just rent free in people's heads.
Like, listen,
he's become myth. He's like the founder.
There is a level of power there that we can only admire, right? I can stand in awe of like having the level of power where like this was Nomura shit, and Nomura's sitting over there smoking a cigarette. Like I have no idea what the fuck that is.
It's like that Futurama episode with God in it. It's like, like if you
do everything right, they'll never know you did anything at all.
Yeah, exactly. Or they'll start ascribing stuff to you that has nothing to like misattribution is like the word of the day.
So I'm gonna rope a Black Sails thing back into this. At one point, these two characters are talking, and one of them came from nothing, and one of them came from a wealthy family, and he's like. The guy who has nothing is basically like, listen, in this moment you may have won. It's not over yet, but it looks like you're going to win. And he's like, but you had everything handed to you, and my dad was a tailor. Like, and they put his debts on me when I was 12. Like, the fact that we were this close means I ran a long fucking way to catch up to you. And that's how I feel with, like, Nomura and Nojima. Nomura, like, from the gun was just sprinting, and Nojima was just kind of sitting there, like, cigarette, writing. Okay, all right, in about 5 years, it's gonna look really good. And then, like, now he's, like, hopped on a golf cart or something, and Nomura is still sprinting around this track, and Nojima's just kind of, like, leisurely on his golf cart, like, bitch.
Truly wild.
What a fantastic mental image.
Yeah, I'm potentially interested in doing a Final Fantasy VII. Oh man, we can do this a couple of ways.
I feel like we should start at the beginning.
Yeah, we can do remake Rebirth. We could also do compilation of FF7 and be more truncated.
What if
An
you did a
episode for
series
every game.
and you called it something like Never Crisis?
Well,
Yo.
yeah, I think.
Yo, shout out! Honestly, we don't talk about this dude enough. To the dude that ported the fucking game on cell phones about the Turks to like RPG Maker, so people can actually.
Oh, he actually did. Oh,
they
man,
did
I gotta
that.
get on
Okay,
that.
I was about to say
Yeah.
I have not
Oh,
played
get on
Ever
that.
Crisis. That's how. That's yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you look, it's like you can find it. You can just Google it. You can find it. It's
That's before Crisis or
Before
yes,
Crisis.
before
yeah.
before
before
Crisis.
Crisis. Before Crisis.
From my
starts, yeah.
understanding, like a stunning port. Like I've looked at like the stuff that they've showed about like this, like they're like we're done with it, like it's finished. It looks awesome, but you have to
wild.
listen. The amount of balls, right, to be like, listen, this media property is gonna go for like 30 years, and we're just gonna keep adding to it. And you are either gonna catch up to us and understand where we're going, or you're gonna be like some of the people who review like Rebirth and like I don't understand what's going on. I'm like, it's right there. It's right.
On the text.
It's not even subtext. It's text. The
Yeah.
text is texting in front of your face.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god. Yeah, like, you know, it's one of those things, like, I don't want to slander anybody in the Games Press, because I am Games Press, several of those people were my friends. I really don't. But, like, reading that review, those reviews, being like, I didn't understand the ending, and, like, getting to the, like watching, my wife gets to play these games before I do, because that's, like, her game as a kid, right? Like, Zelda I get to play first. She gets to play FF7 shit first. And it's crazy that we've probably had about the same number of games. Even it's just FF7 and it's also Zelda as a franchise. But,
Damn, yeah.
you know, she plays them and I watch them, and then I'm gonna go back and do them later. And you know, we're sitting there. I'm like, man, like people have talked about how confusing this ending is. Like, I'm a little bit concerned right now. And then like we get to the ending, and we're like,
Yeah. Not only
right there.
not only am I not
Media literacy is
confused
not
by
a
it,
common skill.
which shouldn't surprise anyone that I'm not confused by the ending of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because I wasn't confused by the plot of BlazBlue. So, you know,
Truly a degenerate.
Also, I would argue not that complicated if you can understand the concept of a time loop. Like,
yeah, if you understand the concepts of quantum entanglement, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, observer theory,
No big deal.
Schrodinger's cat thought experiment, like it's easy.
listen,
You
if you can
understand these
follow
really
Bioshock
high-level
Infinite-
scientific concepts.
Yeah, like, you know, if you can follow Bioshock Infinite, you can follow anything else. It's fine. Like,
But
you know, it's
yeah, I didn't think it was that complicated, but I've also consumed some criticism about Rebirth, and I disagree with what some other people out there are saying. Like, I have a completely different takeaway from it. So
Well,
that
that was
could-
me for remake, so I'm curious to hear what you got to say here.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to dive into in a spoiler cast. I'm going to keep it spoiler free in this discussion here, though. I forget how much of this I had said before in previous discussions as I was kind of working my way through it, but this game is really great. I would say exceptional. I would say fantastic. I would also say I do have problems with it. There are a lot of, like, maybe not a lot.
talk your shit, Brian.
There are a few things that this game does over and over again that are incredibly obnoxious. There are animations that you will see hundreds of times that take orders of magnitude longer than they need to. And I don't know why they decided to do this. Anytime you attack, I mean, I know why they did this. I just think it's unnecessary. There's a thing in action games where a lot of people will try to game the system, and there are older games where you can do an attack while your attack is going out. You can pause, you can change the weapon, equip something that is slower and a lot more powerful, and then unpause, and you'll get the faster animation with the higher damage.
Listen, I was summoned from the kitchen while I was making my second drink. I want you to know how important this was. This is called an animation cancel.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who are not an
I was
action
going to
games
fill
pro,
in for this, but I'm glad you stepped back to do
like
it.
I was like in action games, and I literally just came out of my kitchen, like walked over here. I was like, listen.
For those not watching the video feed right now, Will just literally returned and is looming in the camera. Like,
Yeah.
I'm about to,
I'm trying
about to
The drink that I'm trying to make is 70% vodka, okay?
Hell
so
yeah.
I need you to understand where I am right now. However, this is called an animation cancel, and this is what you do if you're a sicko, all right? So the fact that, like, Rebirth has animation cancels, like, swear. I'm touching my heart.
blessed.
But
Here's
the
back
thing.
to Brian.
But now, Will, do you appreciate that I brought this up?
Yes, I do. I think this is the level of gameplay discussion that we need more of.
Yeah. So there in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that is a technique that has been around for ages in action games. In Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, they got around people being able to do that by ensuring that at any time when you are in the middle of an attack animation and you hit pause, it will not take you to the menu where you can adjust your equipment and these sorts of things. It will instead only pause the game with an option to quit or resume. Because of that, and the fact that there are many other animations that are not attack animations, such as, I talked about this before, I forget where, it might have been on Twitter or something like that, but there'll be animations where you will, let's just say you're restoring like a chocobo stop that's been knocked over. You have to hold triangle for a long time and it will slowly fill up as Cloud slowly lifts up this thing that is in no way anywhere near as heavy as his sword that he just swings around with wild abandon. It's ridiculous that he can't just lift this thing up immediately and put it down.
Yeah,
it should be a single button press.
You mentioned this specific one last episode.
Shitty little aluminum street sign thing.
It should be a single triangle button press to lift it up, and it should take place really quickly, and then you should use that extra time that you got back into your life to pet the cute chocobo chick that's going to be right next to you, looking up at you with just admiration in its eyes. That's how you
Instead,
should
you're
be
just like,
spending
I
your
don't
life.
want to be here anymore. I
Yeah.
want to exit and not fucking look at this little creature.
Yeah.
'Cause it just pisses me off now.
And then even after you lift it up, you have to wait for Cloud to slowly reach up and tilt the sign just so. And then you have to wait as the little feather descends and floats down from the top of the sign. And then he grabs it and then he slowly lowers his hand. And then when all of his movement has ceased, you can finally hit start and actually go into the menu. Or you can actually run away. And so many little moments of your life are taken away by this game in things like that. And it happens, that's literally just one tiny fraction of the amounts of activities that there are in this game, most of which have some sort of animation like that.
And if you're going to make us do the animation, let us cancel or skip it with, the pause button after the first time. Just let us see it once, and then it's like, cool, I know what this is. If this is a repeatable activity, I know what this is. Let me skip it.
Yeah.
It's also the same thing. Even Zelda does this, It's like the painfully slow thing where, the drop falls on your Sheikah Slate in Breath of the Wild. It's like, nope, skipped. Straight to dialogue.
Yeah. And there's other things, like when you bend down to open a chest, which happens a lot. It takes too long. And not only that, but you have to be very close to it, but not too close to it. And you have to be
drink.
Nice. And you can't be too far off of center of the chest, which is like, yes, this is realistic, but like I've said with Red Dead Redemption 2, there's a certain point at which your aspiration to realism takes away from the fun of the game, and you should not do that.
Brian, I was gonna say, like, I think we blame this problem on Rockstar.
Yeah.
Right? Like, specifically, like,
Red Dead Redemption 2 is like the poster child of this problem.
Fidelity is not the end-all be-all that you think it is.
So
it does not respect your time.
No, I'm not gonna like sidetrack this. I'm gonna talk about this game later, but so I've been doing a lot of Rise of the Ronin stuff, and I think I talked about it when I reviewed it. I'm gonna talk about it again today because I've been playing more of it for guides work. And one of the things I respect specifically about Japanese games most of the time is they will obfuscate things. they'll be like, listen, we're not animating this kiss. We're going to have these characters lean in and get real close, and we're just not going to animate it. Or we're not going to animate this character like holding this object up, because that's really fucking expensive. Or we're not going to animate like a really long pickup animation for this because it gets in your way, right? Like,
yeah, a character will hand something to another character, and the frame will cut off like above their elbows.
Right. And
it's just like, huh.
And then you'll see them like reach into their pouch, and then it will cut, and it will be like they're holding it out to you like this, right? So it's smart, good way to do it. But I think that we have, I a couple weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, I don't have a sense of time anymore. I posted something on Twitter that was viral again. I hate that. Where I said, listen, Nintendo is the only people smart enough about 15, almost 20 years ago now to be like, listen, the chase for graphical fidelity, like what I call chasing the graphical unicorn, is fucking stupid. It balloons development costs. It makes everything take longer. We're not gonna fucking do it. We're releasing the Wii. And Japan has been better about this overall, I think largely because every single company over there is scared to death of going bankrupt after the 360 PS3 generation.
Because they've already had their AAA crash and clawed themselves back.
Right, and so they've already dealt with this, right? And the West is now starting to realize what this feels like. But, like, the search for, like, lifelike visual fidelity is not a real or sustainable thing in video games. And I think people fail to realize this. It's like, well, TV can do it, right? And film can do it. And it's like, yeah, because you don't have to fucking make, like, the dude who's playing the main character. That is a human being. You put him in front of a camera and film him, and he does shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you have to make a model. You have to rig it. You have to have a skeleton. You have to have muscles. You have to do all this shit, right? They then have to animate, often by hand or through motion capture, right? That shit is expensive. It takes a long-ass time.
When you're filming somebody doing an action scene, you don't have to worry about the main character getting into a weird position and just glitching out all over the place.
Right, you don't have to code that shit, right? That's just like people practicing something over and over again. Or you have stunt doubles who do that, for a living, right? Like stunt people who have trained like for years and years and years to be able to practice and master choreography very quickly and do these very complex scenes. And this idea that we are going to somehow get there in the video game space, I think, fails to underestimate that we're basically capped as far as like hardware goes. We're seeing now incremental upgrades per generation.
Yeah.
Right. And we're not even seeing people realize the power of the generation that we're in before the next one comes out. Like you tell me like, oh, this game looks really good. Yeah, does it? But does it look really good in a new way? Or is it just a shinier version of a game you couldn't have got last gen? 9 times out of 10, it's just a shinier.
Yeah. Which like the fact that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth don't look that different graphically, and they were from 2 different generations, like, and the fact that that is true of most of the first party Sony games this generation. Like, these are all things that could theoretically or literally exist on older hardware. They just look better. Like, we're never going to see a jump like the Super Nintendo to the N64 or the, again, to the PS1 again. No. We're never going to see that again. Like,
and I think, I'm sorry, Brian, because I think I've derailed the conversation slightly, but
it's okay. I remember where I was going.
So part of the reason for that, and I want to say this very quickly and then give it back to you, is like when you have a major jump from 2D to 3D, right? There's like an enormous learning curve where people have to be like, okay, we know how to design 2D levels. Do we know how to design 3D levels? We know how to animate sprites. Do we know how to animate 3D models? We know how to make this thing look good at a fixed camera. Do we know how to make it look good when you can have the player just change the camera whenever they want? And these are very complex questions. You ask a game developer, like one of the hardest things to do is, and they'll tell you it's a fucking escalator, right? I remember when like a Dragon a few years ago was showing off people on escalators that looked real, and people were like, and developers were like, you have no fucking clue how hard that is.
The bread scene in fucking 7?
Yeah.
Just where he takes a bite out of a bread roll, and it's a 4-second animation in like a 15-second scene. That shit is unbelievable. That was just them flexing. Just like, look at what we've managed, look at what we can fucking do. Nothing else in the game looks that good, and it looks mundane to the average person. But when you know about animation, you sit there and go, how the fuck did they do that?
That took somebody
What
months.
the fuck?
Yeah, that took somebody months. That single...
It's like what everybody was saying about Tears of the Kingdom. It's like, if you know, you know how ridiculously impressive this is. Yeah.
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 So, all this to say, like, the chase for the graphical unicorn, right? The attempt to catch the graphical unicorn, irresponsible, irredeemable, causing a lot of problems. And to the motherfucker who was like, oh, well, Hi-Fi Rush would still be alive if Tango had made a worse-looking game, they quoted me on that. Fuck you. That's not what I said. I was actually arguing for games that look like that, right? That's the point, is finding that middle ground where games still look great, which, frankly, we found on the Xbox 360. Boot up Gears 3 and tell me that game isn't really pretty. Like, it still looks fantastic.
Visual fidelity is trumped every single time by style and execution of.
Yeah. And so when we have games like, and Square Enix is talking about, like, we haven't hit our sales targets, I'm like, Square, you didn't need to do this. Now, Square, better than most, is, like, reusing their models, reusing a lot of shit, Like, the fact that this compilation exists, that this has been turned into a trilogy, is kind of a testament to Square, because they're reusing a lot of the shit from the first game. But doing what they're doing is still ridiculously expensive. And back to Brian, long tangent. Sorry, boss.
Yeah. It's all right. There were some good things in there. And one thing that I also want to say, to tag on to, what we're talking about, chasing the graphical unicorn, which we have talked about before. And we've also talked about, on a similar note, making games so focused on realism that they stop being fun. And fun in games should really be, for most games, not all games, because some games like The Last of Us isn't necessarily supposed to be fun. Like, that's not its guiding light. But for most games, and particularly games focused on action, that should be your guiding principle. And if something takes away from that, you should seriously consider why it needs to be in this game and weigh what you are losing, what you are giving up to gain what you are getting. Like, you always have to look at it as a trade.
I would argue it's not even fun. I would argue it's feel, which is a way more nebulous term, right? Like, fun is like, but like,
I'm not trying to get too philosophical with it. I was just trying to be like very basic with it and then move on. Yeah.
I would say, but I would argue like, as critics, we have to be specific. Like, when we talk about the way an action game feels, we're not talking about that it's necessarily fun all the time. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. I don't want to, like, make this a belabored point, but I think that distinction is meaningful. And to your point, right? Like, those moments where you're sitting there in Rebirth holding a button to open a fucking chest doesn't feel good. It feels like you're wasting my time.
Yeah. A lot of the times in the game, I was just like, I'm really... we'll get into this in the deep dive, and I'll just mention it briefly for now. Like, there are... There's a reference to in Futurama that I make a lot, which is there's the two cloned people running for office, and one person is saying, your 10-cent titanium tax is too... or your 10-cent titanium tax goes too far. And then the other guy says, your 10-cent titanium tax doesn't go too far enough. And so that second quote is something that I feel keenly about some stuff, where it's just like, man, you really had some promise, and I wish you would have taken it further. I wish you would have been appropriately braver. And I do feel like there is a degree, and I compared this, I think Kris is the one who said ouch when I said this, but when I compared like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth to Star Wars Episode 7 and 8, where it's like...
Yeah, I'm going to cringe every time you do that.
Yeah. But it's based on the ending of Final Fantasy Remake, I sensed a lot of promise and a lot of potential. And to me, despite all of the things that Final Fantasy Rebirth does really, really well, including the combat, this is some of the best video game combat, like, just that there is.
I will go even further and say that this is the best combat system Square has ever made. Fuck FF16, it's this.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And you guys know how I am sometimes with, not refusing to throw caution to the wind. I will couch my things and say, like, one of the best, it's hard for me to think of a combat system that I would want to play more than more of this. Like, this is it's just perfection. It's just so good. And so that was the thing that was pulling me forward in the game. Like, I would get to a point where I would be like, all right, I don't really want to play this fucking Queen's Blood tournament on this ship, despite how good Queen's Blood is, because what I really want is more of the combat. Like, I'm enjoying this story bit. I'm enjoying this parade. I'm enjoying all of this. Like, there are sections of this game where I had just an ear-to-ear grin on my face for, like, hours. Not the whole time, but there were certain points. And I was pulled forward by the incredible quality of the voice acting and of the storytelling and of the ways that they expand on these characters that I've known forever. Like, Remake and Rebirth have taken Final Fantasy VII from one of the Final Fantasies that I like the most to, like, the top of the pile. Like, Final Fantasy X is amazing. That's always going to be incredibly precious to me. 4 is also very, very close to me. 8 is always going to have a special place in my heart because I think it was the first one that I like. It was the first of the 3D Final Fantasies that I, like, really resonated with, because I got 8 before 7. But, and 9 has its places. There are a bunch of games in this series.
Yeah, at the top.
That mean.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, there are a bunch of games in this series that are very meaningful to me. And I've played all of them except I have not finished 2 and I have not finished 3. And I never played 11 or, like, the 13, 2, or 3. But other than that, I think I've played.
Don't worry, you're not
every
missing
game.
out on much.
I think I've played every game in the mainline series at least. But I really respect and applaud the amount of detail and care that Square has put into Remake and Rebirth. I really am pleased with it. And I think that this is absolutely one of the all-time games. And it could be that the third game is going to come out and just blow the door off its hinges, and I'm going to be completely blown away with what they do with it. But I am pleased with what they did, and I would give this game high marks, or very high marks. But it
could be Final Fantasy VII Rise of Skywalker is the problem.
No,
and you don't know.
I think it's, it's the, God, what is it? Oh my God. The villain from Wonder Woman 1984 or whatever.
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, Pedro Pascal. He says life is good, but it can be better.
It could be better. Maxwell Lord.
Yeah. And that is, I feel like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is great. It could be better. Yeah. And yeah, and I mourn for the ways in which it could have been better and more interesting. Which is the same way that I feel about The Last Jedi, which is like, it has some of the most interesting ideas in recent Star Wars, but it also has a lot of places where it falls flat. And I just wish that the great parts had been indicative of the whole instead of being at odds with it. So
listen, I don't want to cause a whole nother discussion. I just want to make it brief.
Sure.
Whoever wants to talk next. But I think Remake is a very, like, focused game, mm-hmm. I think, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And Rebirth is Square Enix being like, what if we made Ubisoft game?
Yeah. What if looked at Like a Dragon and went, we could do that.
Right, but, like, the reason I say Ubisoft game and not Like a Dragon is because, listen, RGG...
Like a Dragon is also quite focused.
Yeah, RGG cooks on a level that most studios are just not capable of. And like Kris understands this, but unless the rest of you know how I feel about Yakuza as a series, like RGG is a top 5 video game developer working right now. Like
Straight
that
up.
studio is enormously talented, and they know what they're about, and they just fucking deliver, right? And Square, as much as I would like to say the same thing about them because I love that studio and I've loved them since I was a kid,
Yeah.
is not. And I feel like Square sometimes trend chases and things like that. And I feel like they looked at this and they were like, what does an open world game need to be? Right? And they picked the Ubisoft game because as uncomfortable as it is, like basically every game in the last 20 years has been Assassin's Creed, and we kind of need to talk about that at some point. Um, and they were like, yeah, it needs to be fucking Assassin's Creed. And it was like, listen, man, like you have actual combat in this game.
Yeah.
Unlike Assassin's Creed. Like you have likable characters, unlike Assassin's Creed. Like this game is brave, unlike Assassin's Creed. Like and on and on and on and on and on, right? Like there's a creative vision here. But I feel like they looked at what the open world genre has become and they were like, listen, like you need to have map icons. You need to climb towers and shit. And while I think that a lot of the stuff that's in Rebirth is really well done, like I think the chocobo racing is excellent. Like I think a lot of the things that are in there are good. It also feels very bloated and like very like go here, check off map icon, right? In a way that nobody likes. If we're being really honest with ourselves, nobody likes that shit. Right? Like if you are a gameplay per square inch per dollar person, like more power to you, but also I'm begging you to reconsider your life. Like
Go back and play Daggerfall Unity and stay over there. It's fine. You
right,
don't
yeah.
need to bring that to the rest of the games.
Please,
it already
like,
exists.
We need to divorce this idea of like long is good and value per dollar is good instead of like the experience you get per like the time you spent, right? And this is not to like shit on Rebirth, which I think is actually quite good, but I can't imagine how much better it would have been if someone at Square had been like, we don't need to do this.
Yeah.
You know, like we really don't need to do this. Like, listen, all due respect to Ubisoft, who has published and made some fantastic games, like the Sands of Time trilogy and the New Prince of Persia and a bunch
including
of stuff.
Including some Assassin's Creed games.
Yeah, which were, you know, genre defining elements, right? Like
AC4, go to they're still trying to chase that dragon.
Yeah, I will go to bat for that is a game that I really adore. Because I think it's very uninterested in being Assassin's Creed, which is what I think makes it good. Like
yeah.
it's
a pirate game.
Yeah. It's a game about pirates that also has Assassin's Creed in it. But I think we don't often talk about this, the long-term effects of developers looking at design choices and being like, we can do that. And you can trace it to regenerating health from Halo. You can trace it to map icons from Assassin's Creed. You can chase it to like puzzle platforming from Prince of Persia, which then got put into Uncharted. Like people look at these choices and they're like, yeah, that was good, but they fail to understand why that was good in the context of that particular game. And
it's the
why
exact same thing that happens with Dark Souls. Exactly.
Yes. Where everyone's trying to make like stamina-based combat, and I would actually really love to use this as a transition to what I want to talk about, if you guys are cool with that. Where I am so fucking tired of stamina-based combat, bro. Like, I cannot deal with this shit anymore. Please let me use some fucking moveset without worried about, like, being opened up because I did one more attack than I should have, and this boss is just gonna fucking kill me. Like, please let me actually use my moveset and be the character, right? Like, there is a reality out there, and Mitch Saltzman and I have talked about this a lot, where everybody, instead of looking at fucking Dark Souls 10, 15 years ago, looked at Ninja Gaiden and said, this is what action games should be. But
that would be the better timeline.
That would be the better timeline, but unfortunately it's not the one we live in. But my point is that I think that Square got a little caught up in, like, this is what an open world game is, because realistically, like, they don't have a lot of experience doing that, and that's okay. Right? Like,
and I will say, like, just to jump in just a little bit, I will give them credit. Rebirth does the open world better than most of the other ones. And
yes,
this is way, way, way better than the open world in 16.
Yes.
Way
and
better.
I think, and like, I do not want to come off like I'm bashing, like, the Rebirth team here. I think, like, for a studio that does not have a lot of experience doing this kind of game, and doing this kind of combat, and doing this kind of, like, long form over multiple, like, Square doesn't do multiple games with the same story with the same characters that much. Like, let's be real, right?
Yeah,
they don't do that.
And those that do are usually very dubious.
Right, so like they're doing a lot of new things here, and I do not want to come off like I'm bashing Square. I think Rebirth is a game you should play. I think they're very brave for making games this way. I cannot recommend it enough. However, I think we also have a duty as critics and people who play these games to be like, listen, this could have been better, right? And
there's a point where enough is enough, yeah.
Right, yeah. It's not to take away from the things it does well. Like, I think the Chocobo racing in that game fucking rips, and it can be its own game. It's
but they killed that game. They made that game, and then they killed
it, right? So, like, props to the actual designers of this game and the systems that they made. But I think at a certain point, we need to look at these games that are 100, 150 hours long and be like, listen, we really don't need to do this. Especially if you were Square and you're looking at, like, we're not selling enough to cover our development budget. Like, okay, cut 15 hours of open world shit. Cut 20. Cut 25. We don't need this. Like, no one is going to...
I want shorter games that look worse by better paid developers, and I'm not kidding.
Not kidding.
Who are paid to work fewer hours.
Right, hours. Like, when people talk about the way that Rebirth is, they're going to talk about how it made them feel to spend time with those characters.
Which is good.
Yeah, which is good, which is what you want, right? Or how much they loved that combat. They are not going to talk about the open world. Ever. Ever, 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 because people don't view games that way. I loved having so much to do. To an extent, yes. But beyond that extent, and I think that extent caps at around 50, 60 hours. Right? So, like, that's the point I want to make. I don't want to belabor it.
Yeah.
Can I talk about Rise of the Ronin?
Hold on a sec. Mumjum in the chat says, Brian mentioned repetitive animation, and I just had a 10-minute flashback of using Knights of the Round summon on the PS1. Yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to get there with the next game.
Bro, I would literally start that summon and go make a sandwich.
And the next game, it'll be like you use Knights of the Round, and then a screen comes up, and you play Capcom's Knights of the Round, and you have to play until your run continues.
Yeah, and like, I think there's a difference, right? Because like FF7, the original game, is extremely focused, like hyper focused. You can do everything in that game in 55 hours, thereabouts, 50. And if you're sitting in Knights of the Round, you're like, cool. It's a great time to go make myself a drink. I'm gonna be here for the next 3 minutes.
And then
but at that point, it's your victory lap, because you got to go through all the rigmarole of getting Knights of the Round, and then here you are, the most powerful attack ever. It's like, yeah, you want to do this once. It looks really cool. That's awesome. It's like, cool. That's your victory lap for doing everything. Can I skip it now?
But
no, I'm going to go make a sandwich.
No, of course not. And then you're going to come back from having made your sandwich or your drink, and then you're going to hit mime, and then you're going to go make the other whatever you didn't make before.
and in fairness to Square, they learned this lesson in the 90s and then promptly forgot it. That game punishes you for using Knights of the Round late game. Like, the final boss in that game has a different health if you hit him with Knights of the Round right off the bat. It actually is like, listen, we understand that you're here, but also fuck you. You cheating little bitch. And then FF8 is like, listen, we understand that you're here, but also we're going to give you something to do, which is the boost gauge, right? Like,
yeah.
Yep, that's it exactly. Here is an actual little mini game to increase the power of your summon if you pay attention to it.
Right.
And it's fun.
And you can pay it, yeah.
And it's fun. And when you feel bad when you, like, press it one too many times, your summon thing goes back to 75, and you're like, oh, it's a 250! God damn! It's so, like...
And they do it for limits as well, like Renzo Kuken. Like, you can do inputs and stuff.
Right, you have to match with the timing of the bar, right? So, like,
yeah.
things
or
like
even
that,
just a gunblade trigger. Shit.
Yeah. Make your player feel more invested in the moment to moment, right? Which, can I transition now? Because I want to talk about this.
Sure. Yeah, go for it. Why not?
So,
we'll talk more about this.
Rise up, Ronin.
We'll talk about Rebirth more at a later date.
So I reviewed Rise of the Ronin for IGN, and I give it a 7 at the time, and I stand by that review and every word in it. But also, it's like low-key now one of my favorite games on the PS5.
Ooh.
Which I've kind of had to reckon with. And I think...
Is that a diss at the PS5 or a credit to Rise of the Ronin?
I think it's a credit to Rise of the Ronin, actually. And I want to talk about, like, holistic design, right? Because Rise of the Ronin, I feel like, is really good at this. And when I reviewed the game, I had not done everything. And I'm very close to being on the verge of having done everything. Like, everything. 100 hours into the game, everything. And the cool thing about Rise of the Ronin is that it really rewards you for being in its world in a way that I think a lot of games don't. So if you've never played it, I do highly recommend it. Like, it is a Team Ninja game. Its action is pristine, sublime. Like, you hit a parry in that game and you feel like a fucking god. It's Team Ninja, right? Like, it feels good. It's kind of a Souls-like in a way, but great combat. It's gorgeous, big world, lots to do. It does suffer from Ubisoft map icon a little bit, but I think the way that it distinguishes itself is in the side quests, in a way that I had not quite seen all of when I reviewed it. And I think part of the reason for that is that the game is just big, right? It's huge, it's enormous, and it's also that it really rewards you for being in the small moments. So Rise of the Ronin has what we call what it calls a bond system, right? Where you raise your relationship with most of the characters in the game, and you do that by
Social link, go.
Yeah, exactly. Very similar to Persona Social Links, where you do that by like doing missions for them and talking to them in a way that they like and giving them gifts, and it's very standard, right? But ultimately, what this does is it allows you to change major parts of the game. So the game is set in a period where, Japan is kind of in turmoil, and there's pro-shogunate factions and anti-shogunate factions. And you get to choose, where you're gonna stand, right? And you can change choices multiple times in the game. And as you develop your relationships with these characters, you actually kind of change the outcomes for some of them. There are certain characters who, if you don't do enough stuff to raise your bond level over the course of the world to make the rest of the world kind of ally with your faction, that character will die in a main story mission. They're dead, right? But if you've done enough stuff, they live. Okay, cool. I now get an additional side quest with this character where their fate changes, and I get to be rewarded for that. Or in some cases, like, hey, this character has tuberculosis. If you do if you do a bunch of side quests with these other characters that are like, we're trying to find a cure for tuberculosis, you can actually save their life. Now, is that realistic? Probably not. But it does give you incentive to do these things, right? Where at a certain point, like, if you don't do this, they will die. Or depending on the faction that you pick during certain missions, these characters will die, right? If you choose, like, pro-shogunate and you go into the if you go into, like, a pro-shogunate mission, like, you will have to kill your friends who are anti-shogunate faction members, or vice versa. And it does choice in a really interesting way because of that, where you're like constantly moving through the world and building these reputations with not only the world, but with these other characters that matter, right? Like, off the top of my head, just by doing side quests, I can think of 3 characters who's like the fate of that character you determine. And then you see different stuff because of that, because otherwise they're dead. Or like, hey, like, I feel like a lot of times it's like, do you want to be good or evil? It's not really like judging you on that. It's like, do you want to support the system or do you want to break it down? Like, that will cost you characters. Because there are some of them who are not like, we've gotten to the point, I think, in video games where the game really bends to you very heavily and the characters really bend to you very heavily, where if you're like buddy with them, right, they'll kind of just go along with you. Rise of the Ronin is not that one. Like, there are characters that are like, I'm extremely pro-shogunate. Nothing you can say is going to make me change my mind. If you go into this mission, you will have to kill me. This way, with this faction. And then you do, and you're like, that person was my friend. Fuck. Right? And it also allows you to do these really, like, very sweet romances with a lot of these characters. And as I've seen more of them, like, they're all very good and very thoughtful. Like there's one where you get with this character and he gives you and everybody is bisexual, it's their own. It's fine. Like you know, doesn't matter what your character is. And you know, he has this really moving monologue about like giving you cologne or like a perfume. And he's like, listen, you know, like that is an item you can equip, so you actually get like a physical reward for romancing this character. And he's like, listen, you know, like I bought this for you because I think it suits you. But I think sometime like because he also like wears a different scent. Like maybe we should swap scents, right? Like that way we can be together when we're. And it's not about like just going for like a scene where you're intimate. Like there's intimacy in these conversations where you're just being together in these moments with these characters, and they're rewarding you for that in ways that make a lot of sense for these characters, right? Like, you know, there's one character who is a doctor that you can get together with, and she says, you know, every time you go out, I'm worried that you're not going to come back. I have to live with that, and that sucks. And I'm not going to ask you to change, but that does suck, right? So you better come back. And these choices feel like very distinct and very like real for who these characters are, right? Like you have a character that's a dandy, so he gives you cologne. You have a character that's a doctor, so she worries about your health. You have a character that maybe you romance and dies, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like this character is going to die, so you become very close with this character in the early chapters, and then they die, and you're like, fuck. Okay, now what, right? And so like, you know, you could min-max, I guess, if you wanted, like, do all these characters at once, but, like, it makes you feel like this world exists part of you and that you are playing a role in it in a way that I haven't seen a game do in a really long time. Where, like, characters will make choices away from you. You do not matter that much. Like, you're important, right? Like, you're gonna choose the way how things play out ultimately, but, like, you can't save everybody. You gotta pick. And some characters, just no matter what you do, they're going to die.
And it feels fair to them because they're written that way. That's what they believe. That's how they act. And you come to learn that and respect that.
Right. And it's like these characters made choices that led to the things that happened to them. And I wouldn't have them like alter those choices to be more like me because I got a certain amount of influence for anything. Because that's who that character is. Right. And it makes sense when, like, you see one of your friends being like, fuck it, I'm anti-shogunate, like, we're going to do this thing, and it may not be the smartest thing, and we're going to go into this battle, and he dies as a result, and you're like, shit, dude. Like, that's it. And one of the things that I think is really smart is it rewards you in ways that are very small. Like, there's certain parts where it's like, you spared this character's life. This character later dies anyway, there's nothing you can do about that. But their friend notices, hey, you didn't kill this person. So I'm going to show up as a side quest later on, and then you can use me in other missions and gain relationship status with me. It's very small things like that, right? Where like if you choose this side quest with this faction at this moment, later on you unlock the ability to save this character's life, and if you don't, you never see it. And it also gives you the ability to go back in time through this book that you get and be like, cool, I want to try this mission from the other faction and see what happens. Just kind of play with that, right? And then you can just pick. You can be like, oh, okay, well, you know, I did the pro-shogunate faction. I want to do the anti-shogunate faction for this one. And it feels like it respects your choices without building everything around. Like, yeah, you're going to make your choices. Like, you cannot do everything for everybody. You cannot be everything to everyone. At some point, you know, there's going to be a cost for the things that you choose. But it respects you for it and rewards you for it and encourages you to, like, build these relationships with these characters and see where they go and do this other stuff because there is an actual reason for it. Like when you save somebody who's going to die otherwise, it's like, oh, actually, the stuff I did actually made a difference, right? So as I've played more of it and like done more of the side quests and seen more of the world, I became really impressed with that. I wanted to talk about it. So I think if you haven't played Rise of the Ronin and you have a PS5 and you're into like games with great combat and that historical setting in Japan, and being given the ability to do all... There's like 57 side quests. There's just focus on characters. Not anything else. Just character development. It's awesome. And I wish more games would be like, listen, the things that you do matter, but there are certain things that you can't change, and at some point you're going to have to pick. So.
Mm.
Good stuff.
This sounds like what I wish Baldur's Gate 3 was closer to, honestly.
Right?
Yeah, I feel like Baldur's Gate 3's design not defining, designing design. Defining design ethos is don't piss off the player. And Rise of the Ronin says the player is going to make a choice and things are going to happen as a result of that. And that to me is infinitely more interesting, especially when it gives me the ability to go back and see like, okay, what happens if I don't do this, right? So,
yeah, I want to inhabit a world and interact with characters that are not just, you know, catering to my whims. Like, this is another good thing about Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood is similar stuff. It's like there are a lot of interesting characters, differing opinions here. Things may go south, things may not turn out as you expect or hope. There may be conflicts and such, but you still interact with the characters and you still make the choices and they make their choices, and it's respects you for what you do and how you do it. And it's like, this is good. This is what I want. I don't want something to cater to me. And this is a problem. This is something I've seen come up a lot with discussing Starfield, funnily enough, and Bethesda games in general of late. It's like they are so afraid that the player is going to miss something or that they're going to piss them off that everything just becomes homogenous slurry. There is nothing there because they're like, no, we want you to do everything. And as a result, nothing matters. Nothing can be committed. We can't write anything serious or focused because a player may not vibe with that. And that's anathema to us. And it's like, well, then you just get nothing. It's not interesting. I'd rather have a world that I can inhabit and explore that doesn't necessarily bend just to me. I can influence in certain ways, but yeah, I don't want to be pandered to. I want to explore these worlds because world building is probably the aspect that of any creative medium. World building is the purview of video games. It allows you to inhabit and explore worlds far deeper and far more intimately than any other creative medium can, because they're all limited in certain ways, and not nearly enough games lean into that. Not even close. I feel like that's something they should be doing. They should be leveraging the strengths more than just trying to ape other mediums. And so honestly, Rise of the Ronin sounds pretty fucking great for that exactly.
Yeah. Like Kris, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I want to be an important player, but I don't want the world to revolve. And it does it in a really clever way where it's like, listen, like both of these factions are trying to win you over because by the time you have to make your first major choice, you've done work for both of them and you respect both of the players, right? Like you respect these guys. And it's like, man, like I was talking to my wife about this today and I was like, man, like at one point you actually get to like hang out with the Shogun in Rise of the Ronin. And like he becomes one of the characters that you can, form a bond with and get reputation with, I guess, for lack of a better word. And it's like, man, like I don't hate you. Like you're a decent dude, but your government is so fucking corrupt. Like it has to stop. And you're forced to make this choice. And so and then there are moments where like third parties outside of both jurisdictions are like, fuck it, we're gonna burn Edo to the ground. And neither the pro or anti-shogunate forces want that. And so you're like, I guess we're working together for a little bit to stop these crazy fuckers. Like, like we don't want, we just want to make a better Japan. Like, we don't want the city burned. We don't want all these people dead, and it feels natural in a way where you can move between these factions. It doesn't always work. There's a couple missions where it doesn't always work, but like 99% of the time it works. And you're like, I get it. I get why in this moment, like, even if you do this thing, they would still be like, listen, we still need your help, right? Like, we still want you to work alongside us because you do build these relationships where the game decides to be like, you have to make a choice here. Right. And even if it's like, oh, you fought on this one side, they're like, listen, like, we're just trying to like, stop the city from being burned down or these people from being killed or like someone who I know is your friend. Like there's an assassination attempt. We need your help. Right. So it feels like very natural and organic where you're moving between these sides and like talking to these characters and building these relationships. And I think, like, low-key, it's one of the best games I've seen do it in a while. And it's almost all in side quests. I mean, it gets, like, main questing near the end of the game, but, like, if you don't do the side quests, you miss on so much context for who these characters are and why they do the things they do. And I think it's, like, one of the best uses of side quests I've ever seen in a game. So, yeah, I guess my point is if you haven't played Rise of the Ronin, which is a PS5 exclusive, and you own a PlayStation 5 and you like Team Ninja's way of designing combat and you like big open worlds and you like these choices that allow you to change the fate of characters that feel like it respects you while also respecting who those characters are as individuals, like it's really a game that you should play. And I think Team Ninja has done pretty remarkable work, to be honest. They've never made an RPG before.
I hope it gets a PC port.
I do too. I really do. I think that game would find a really cool audience on PC. It's one of those games where like I would love for you guys to make a sequel to it like this, but I would also never want you to touch it again. Like I think what you've done as a singular experience just perfect.
Yeah, I don't need to go back. I don't need to build on this further. You got it. That's cool. Let it be.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it is okay for a story or characters or whatever to sit for it to end.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it does a really good job of that. Like I said, because of the, it plays out without you some places. I think that's really cool. Thank you guys for letting me talk about this weird little video game.
Sure.
That's what we're here for. I honestly, I was fascinated by it. I'm like, you're hitting on some really good points, and I dig this, and I want it to have a PC port so I can play the damn thing. Frankly, you've sold me. So yeah.
I'm really hopeful. I hope that game does really well. And I hope that it finds an audience, even if it's just like a cult audience. I hope that they port it. I mean, Team Ninja's been pretty good about that stuff, right? Like their games eventually come to multiple platforms.
All their recent games have been.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that Sony is like, we're going to let you port this.
Yeah, Sony's kind of in the middle of fucking around and finding out with console exclusivity and like the modern era. It feels like.
Yeah, because the Helldivers 2 community came in and punched them in the dick, and it's like, hey, pay attention, dickheads.
Yeah. And like we talked about Rebirth, and Square Enix is like, okay, we need to stop this shit too. It's like it's rippling out, and everyone's like,
the era of non-Nintendo exclusivity is rapidly running out, I think.
Yeah, and Microsoft is approaching it the same way, where they're like, listen, we're not going to pull Call of Duty from fucking PlayStation, right? Yeah. So I think everybody is realizing that games that are this expensive and this big, and I don't know how much Rise of the Ronin costs. I don't have an inside scoop there. I would imagine it was not cheap, but I would also imagine it's not like Spider-Man 2 or The Last of Us levels of production budget, right? Like, it doesn't feel like that. But it could not have been cheap.
It's still relatively in the purview of what they usually do, right? Like, it doesn't feel like it would be that... Like, it wouldn't have cost as much because they have a lot of the tech and everything already in place to some degree, I would hope.
Yeah, it feels like it was developed on a smart budget. I hope that that's true. Like, it doesn't... It's pretty. It's not gorgeous. Yeah. It feels great. Like, it feels very focused on the things that it wants to do. Also, it has dogs that you can pet and cats. So, if that makes a difference.
11 out of 10.
It does.
Yeah.
It does make a difference.
Koei Tecmo seems to have kind of figured out longevity in some way or another. Like, there could be, as can be the case with especially Japanese companies, where there's like horrible labor abuses we just don't hear about. But like, they can make a game like Wild Hearts that like comes out and doesn't really get attention, and you don't hear about the sky falling over there. They're still like, here's the next Atelier, here's the next Muso. Like, they seem to be able to kind of do their regular things and then also like try something different every now and then and be fine if it doesn't blow the roof off.
Same is true of Square Enix.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, like I hope games like that are finding an audience, and I hope that we are, as a group of people who like enjoy video games, right? Like not just the four of us, but like people in general, are smart enough to realize like experiences where you are respected but not like put on a pedestal. Like there's value in that.
They linger far more,
I think. Yeah.
This was a point that I was going to make earlier when we were talking about whether or not FF7 Rebirth needed to be open world, which is a question that I have asked for a long time, and we've pointed out some games that are it's essential for this to be open world because that's part of what it is, like Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom and things like that. But
that applies to very few games.
Yeah, and often these games will try to, or will have to take a graphical hit, which means that they're not chasing the unicorn as much as they could. But at the same time, there's also there's a word that I think that people need to pay more attention to, and that word is quintessence, which is something being absolutely itself. And that's what I think that we are saying when we're talking about focused experiences, when we're talking about no fat on the bone, when we talk about games from Supergiant or, these sorts of things. Games by, speaking of some of the best games that are available on PS5, something like Returnal, where it's just like, this is an incredible action game that is absolutely what it is and nothing else.
Hyper-focused.
Yeah.
Incredibly specific.
And
I mean, that's, again, like you can attribute that to the fact that it was developed by Housemarque, and all their games are very focused in that regard. They know what they're about.
They're about
and
the
Returnal
arcade
is the most,
yeah,
and Returnal is the most, fucking gorgeous, immaculate version of that, because they're usually relatively arcadey games, but like they're all about that. And they have that style, that quintessence, as you say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you have that, when you embody that with the things that you do, there's another phrase that has been bandied about quite a bit when I was growing up, which is only do what only you can do. Don't try to be Ubisoft if you're not Ubisoft. And even they haven't done
should not
things.
Be Ubisoft.
Well, they haven't done that thing that well consistently. But the greater point, I've kind of let myself wander a little bit to make some points based on previous discussions, but to bring it back to what we're talking about now, chasing the graphical unicorn might make you stand out now, but it's not a way to be remembered.
If I'm going to be remembered, I want to be remembered for coining the phrase "chasing the graphical unicorn."
Yeah,
that's mine.
But think about this. And this is probably a piss poor example, but a lot of times when new consoles come out or when people are trying to show off, they'll have a hyper graphic fidelity sort of thing like Forza Horizon or something like that, where it's just like, this is going to be a very focused experience, but it's going to push the graphics to 10. But those games aren't really remembered for that. Your graphical showpieces aren't remembered long term. You'll have like an off the cuff thing of like, man, you remember the first time you saw Final Fantasy VII on the PS1? It was incredible. Like, and that sort of thing. But that game is more important and more long lasting because of the other things that it did. Because of its storytelling, because of those sorts of things. And so one of the things that Nintendo, like Will said, has learned a long time ago is to value gameplay and innovation and iteration and novelty above all else, which is why their games stand the test of time. It's why people still talk about Super Metroid, because you can count the games in that genre that are that good on one hand with several fingers left over.
Like, and most of them are made by Nintendo.
It's like what Will and I
Super
talked
Metroid,
about.
Hollow Knight, you're done.
Yes, basically. There's a thing that Will and I have talked about with Blizzard as well.
Deserves that third finger.
Yeah. You think what deserves a third finger?
Zero Mission.
I think that's good in a different way, but I agree. I think it is good though.
Zero Mission is definitely the second best Metroid game, and then Dread is third. But anyways, we'll talk about that another time. But the point that I'm trying to make is the greater point of like a lot of what we've been talking about this episode is when you have, and I'm curious to know what you think about, because I have not played Rise of the Ronin. I don't know anything about it other than what you've been talking about. But how similar is it to other modern, like, Asian martial video games? Because we're getting a few of those. We've got Ghost of Tsushima. We've got these other sorts of games. is it trying to
But
do the
half of
same
them are
thing?
made by Team Ninja anyway, so, you know, like Neo, basically.
Yeah, so I would say that it's not operating in the same space as Ghost is, because I think Rise has greater combat ambitions. So to very briefly explain how this works, every weapon in Rise, and there are several. So you've got like katanas, great swords, odachi, spears, polearms, bayonets that attach to rifles that you can wield as weapons. Oxtail swords, which one of my favorites, has at least 3 different fighting styles, right? And those fighting styles are intended to be good against like katana, heavy weapons, light weapons, right? Like standard weapons, heavy weapons, light weapons. But they also tend to have something what's called a shinobi style, which really rewards you for parrying. And what happens when you choose the correct style, kind of like Ghosts, but really not, is like you get a bonus for when you what's called countersparking. You're not actually parrying, you're doing an attack. And that attack connects with their attack and deflects it. And so they can do like a chain of several attacks. So you're basically a counterspark, 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 stun, and then you get to do something cool. So it's very focused on being like kind of the way you see like a samurai film where they're just kind of like, like bouncing off each other's swords, and then someone makes a mistake and they're like, cool, you're dead, right?
Yeah.
So it's very like stamina focused combat in the same way that like Dark Souls is, but I think it's really interesting in that it forces you to play active defense. Like in Dark Souls you can, or just Souls games in general, like you can build up your stamina so you can just block, right? You can dodge. There are fights in Rise where you cannot do that. You have to counterspark them or they will kill you. So it's just like learning their timings, and it's just like this really beautiful choreography where it's like, I know exactly what this chain that you're doing is right now. Parry, parry, parry. Cool, you're getting Azuna dropped. Because there's literally an Azuna drop from Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah, it sounds like Sekiro Plus.
Yeah, basically, like it forces you to be. I think one of the flaws of Sekiro is that it, like in a lot of the hard parry segments, you can just kind of spam parry and get away with it. If you fuck up a timing on this, you'll die.
Yeah.
Like, especially the late game fights are like, you need to understand when you need to counterspark or you will die. So I think what it does that's interesting in a combat thing is that like you can dodge certain things. Like there's also like unblockable attacks. You can counterspark those. You can also just dodge out of the way and like take your very basic punish, right? But each weapon and each style has like several abilities that you can use that are like unique combo chains. And once you master that style, you can pull a combo chain from a different style onto that style. So it's like, nice. Cool, I really like this one. Let me put it on this. It really rewards you for like mastering a weapon and focusing on what makes it good. And not everything has like a ton of combat styles. Like I love the Oxtail Blade, but it only has 3. The Katana has like 8. So like obviously Katana is like a better like basic weapon, right? Where you'd switch to the Oxtail for like kind of a just it does everything. But the cool part of that is the Katana is like, cool, I have Ryu Hayabusa from Ninja Gaiden's moveset. I'm just gonna counterspark you until I can Azuna drop you. Or I have this character's moveset who's a boss early in the game who's like very evasive, and I'm just gonna do that until I can fuck you up. And so it really allows you to, and certain combat styles also like feed into your stats. Certain ones are better, like you have like strength, charisma, intelligence, and dex. And so it's like, cool, certain combat styles focus on these 2 stats. So you can be like, awesome, I'm gonna build my character for strength and charisma, which is what I've done. These are the combat styles I want to use. And then when I master them, I can pull their like best technique and put it on another style. So it really rewards you for sticking with a style. Like, again, with the bonds with the characters, like certain characters will reward you with combat mastery of the style that they use. So it's like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna go to, or like I'm gonna max my bond with this character, or in some cases, I'm gonna go to the dojo where you can fight these characters who often appear as bosses, like one-on-one with a limited number of healing items, really understand their style, and then when I beat them, I master it, and I'm way better as a character because of that. So it really emphasizes like Like, yeah, you can go in with like a style that's not good against somebody, and if you can counterspark them, it doesn't matter. Like, Ghosts, I feel like kind of forced you, like, this is the anti-spear style. This is the anti-sword style. Rise of the Ronin does not care. If you can counterspark them, it does not matter.
Yeah, I like that a lot more. That, I mean, honestly, that makes this game sound a lot more appealing to me. Because I fell off,
Absolutely.
I bounced off of Ghosts, like, pretty quickly.
I think Ghost of Tsushima is actively a bad video game. I'll say it. And it's because of that. Because it's forcing you to use certain manners of playing. And the cool thing that Rise does is it has a style that's called Shinobi. So generally there's Jin, Shi, and then 10 styles, and each of which are good against different things. And there's Shinobi, which is good against nothing. But if you can counterspark with Shinobi, then you put them in a much longer recovery animation, and you can get a way bigger punish because of that. So you're basically like trading like guaranteed damage for like, I'm gonna outskill you. I'm gonna parry you perfectly for this entire chain. And then when I stagger you, like, you're gonna take an enormous amount of damage. So it really like forces you to kind of pick
high risk, high reward.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there are fights in Rise of the Ronin where if you understand what their attack chains are, you will beat them in 30 seconds. And if you don't, they will just kill you. Like, it's entirely skill dependent. No matter the combat style you're using. And I really respect it. It really focuses you to, like, look at a character, that's a spear, I want to be in Chi combat style right now, or I want to be in Shinobi. Because I want to take that big risk, right? Or maybe you have a katana and you're like, listen, I really want Jin and Chi, and I don't want 10, but I can put a Shinobi style here, and then if I'm not feeling comfortable, I have my backup weapon, which covers that. And you can just switch on the fly, right? Like, it really respects the way you want to play. So, I hope I'm explaining that well, but the combat style is very varied, very efficient. Several weapons have several different versions of the same combat style, like a 10 style. The bayonets, for instance, like, reward you for being like, listen, this is the French style, it's very up close and personal, and this is the British style. It rewards you for being far away. So if you have a bayonet that shoots a shotgun shell, you probably don't want to use it with the British style. Like, it rewards you for digging into this stuff and being like, cool, my style is built around this and these attributes, and this is what I'm going to go do to you. And when I master them, I can pull their best technique onto this other style. Like, it is a very deep game in terms of how it rewards you for mastering its combat.
Yeah.
And I want a PC port. That's all I can add to it here.
And this is something I didn't know when I finished the game, because, you know, for review we finished the whole thing, right? But I hadn't done every side quest. The end game side quests are basically like, this is a boss. This is this character at their best. And there are characters in this game where it's like, cool. Like, most characters, like, we represent one combat style. Like, we have a great sword, we use this style. Cool. Okay, cool. There's a couple characters in this game where it's like, when they gas them up as like, this is the best swordsman of this era, they have 3 combat styles, they use multiple weapons, you need to beat them. And if you don't, they will dog walk you. Like, you need to understand how this fight is gonna go. And it's really cool to see, like, a game being like, this character is crazy scary.
Yeah.
Now fight them, and actually have them be, like, really scary, and be like, cool, okay, you've beaten me in my katana stance, I'm going to switch to my spear now in a different combat style, and you better understand when you can counterspark me, I'm just going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the difference from that between me and this game and Ghosts. Is like forcing you to be like, you will learn this, and especially like, it's like the first boss is a team ninja boss fight. You will learn these mechanics, or you will not progress. Like, it is like, hey, yeah, it's Team Ninja. Like, they
it's what they do.
People think I'm crazy when I say this. They design the best combat systems in the medium. You will learn how to do this, or you will not progress. And when you nail it, when you understand what they're asking you to do, and all the intricacies of, like, character building and set building, because there's sets that reward you for certain stats. So, like, hey, if I'm building with a katana that has strength and charisma, I want to build my armor that has strength and charisma, right? Yeah. And then I want to use a combat style that has strength and charisma, so I'm maximizing what I can do. Like, when that all finally clicks for you in this game, it feels incredible. Like, I am building my build to do this thing, and then not only that, I have mastered the skill checks that you're going to throw at me. Where are my parries? Where do I dodge? Like, it is a complete combat experience on 2 buttons, and nobody else does it like Team Ninja.
I dig it. Sounds cool.
Res the Ronin, very cool. I didn't mean to go this long about the game. I got asked a question, so I had to answer.
But it's fascinating.
You give Will some drinks, and he's gonna keep talking.
Yeah, but I haven't been bored this whole time, so I'm fascinated.
Hey,
I want to hear that.
Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing.
Yeah, so that's all I want. I actually didn't want to talk about the combat. I just wanted to talk about the way it respects your choices. But the combat in that game is exceptional. So if you're looking for, like... I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm tired of stamina-based combat, and Rise is that. It's key, not stamina. But it is very, like, Dark Souls stamina. But it respects you. Like, if you have an ounce of stamina left, and you can counterspark this attack chain, you can win that fight.
So, Rise of the Ronin, greatest 7 out of 10 ever made?
Yeah, I think, if I reviewed it today, I think it would bump it to an 8, and I think it's just part of the way that game is designed, where so much comes from the side quests and the other stuff, where it feels like a holistic experience. And that you will see different mission outcomes if characters survive, because you did their side quests. It feels...
You get out what you put in.
Yeah, the game to me is the side quests and the other stuff, and then seeing that play out in the story because you did certain things. So... I wish more games were like it. Honestly, I wish more games took themselves not as a compilation of disparate parts, but as a thing that was built to push you in a direction and say, "This is what we want you to do."
Yeah,
this is what this is, and it does that. It's Team Ninja. Again, like if you've ever heard me talk about Team Ninja, I think they're the greatest action game developer on the planet, bar none. That's what this game is.
Rad.
Good stuff. All right. We've been going a long time on only talking about a few games.
Please, somebody else talk. Yeah. I feel so bad.
What have you been playing this week, Lucas?
Yeah, a very, very different kind of game. So the next game that I've been playing that I can actually... Hold on a second.
Yeah, that's...
What is that?
That was my cat sneezing.
How many times? Dear Lord.
Yo, Lucas, you need to get that cat some Claritin, bro.
She's got an issue with sneezing.
Evidently.
Okay.
So anyway.
Yeah, so the next game kind of in my little embargo roulette wheel that I've kind of been dealing with is...
Embargo... Listen, embargo roulette wheel needs to be trademarked.
Maybe like embargo, more of a carousel, I guess.
That's also listen. This is a platform exclusive. Nobody else can use this phrase. We've copyrighted it. We've slapped it on package Must Box. We're selling it. Fucking Ian Malcolm, this shit. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
T-shirt. Read-only memories. Neurodiver.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is a game that really caught me off guard with how much I liked it. Mostly because I didn't really play the first one. The first one came out many years ago. It's kind of like a very, very indie, very like inspired by like anime and cyberpunk stuff, visual novel kind of thing. There was a lot of drama around it with like the developer, or I guess the CEO of the developer. I guess essentially getting Me Too'd or whatever. Yeah. But like I kind of played it and was like, I kind of get what this is, and it was very like very specific kind of point and click game where it's like, oh, here's the thing you can click on. You can look at it or touch it or inspect it or pocket it or whatever, and it's just like I love Scum VM games, but sometimes I look at that and I'm just like, I don't have time for this. So I just kind of like walk past it or whatever. This game kind of comes across my lap because of work. I'm like, well, all I know about this series is, unfortunate happenstance behind the scenes and kind of
the Twitter scuttlebutt.
Yeah. But let's see what happens. And it turns out it's like a really different kind of thing. It's like set in the same world, and it's got like recurring characters to my knowledge, but it's very different structurally, and it's very pure visual novel in a way that like I really respect. I feel like over the years, with visual novels and with that genre kind of like going like really having like an up and down trajectory in popularity like over here, a lot of times, especially like before like romantic visual novels really kind of took off over here, you would have games where it's like Ace Attorney or like the Zero Escape games where it's like they're visual novels. They want to be visual novels, but they also kind of have to like dump puzzles over your head because
there's a little bit of player interaction and requiring is like how much did you pay attention to progress.
Yeah, and a little bit of like if we don't. There's always this feeling to me is like if we don't have this stuff in here, then people are gonna be like, oh, that's not a video game or something like that. Like there's a like in some cases, like in Ace Attorney's case, it's like clearly like it's like not puzzles. It's more like you're playing along with like the Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah.
So it's not the best example, but then there's other games where it's like, oh, you have to, solve the stupid number puzzle or whatever just to continue on with the story. And it's like a lack of confidence, I guess. In some ways, it's like sometimes I feel like you wanted to just tell a story in this medium, but you were afraid to do that. Or someone
you felt like you had to lean more into the medium itself in ways that don't necessarily complement the story you want to tell.
Yes, or like someone high up on the food chain was like, "No, you have to have puzzles, or we're not gonna sell, or something like that."
More verbs now.
Yeah, Neurodiver is like, no, this is a visual novel, and there's interaction. You have a sort of like guiding hand as the player. You're propelling the story forward, but you don't have to like do extra bullshit just to like justify the fact that you're pressing buttons. It's like you navigate the screen, you click on people and things to interact with them and have conversations, but you're not having to like crank levers around and find switches and solve slider puzzles. Yeah. It's just like a story that you're just kind of like clicking through in a lot of ways. And just like it does it really like gracefully in a way that's like, okay, like these people sat down and are like, this is the kind of game we want to make, and that's what we're doing. I was like, oh, hell yeah! It's like it's got this really straightforward like confidence about it that I just like really connected with and respected. And then on top of that, it like does the whole like kind of candy colored vaporwave, whatever, like 80s, 90s cyberpunky thing. And it's like, okay, you've seen this a million times, but it does it in a way that's like really, or it feels organic. It's like there's a lot of effort made to do more with it than just like look like that. I guess it's like, it has a very, very strong sense of like being a place that has things going on beyond just like this is the style of the game. And something I was kind of like piecing together before. So like on top of those two things, it has this very like poppy like I don't want to say optimistic, almost like sing-songy vibe to it. And it's like it made me think like, okay, this is a lot like an anime dub that was produced in like the 80s or 90s, but without like the burden of it being a dub, if that makes sense. It's like an anime dub, especially from that time, you can tell that like the people who made it are like doing their best, but they're having to get around like the the time constraints of like the lip syncing, because they're going over someone else's work, and they have to like cram the translation, and then so you always get that sort of like unnatural cadence to like the way everyone speaks, and like sometimes there's like a charming element to it, but like otherwise it's like obvious that the things aren't, the things are off, and they're not gonna
and then
work.
you have 4 kids.
Yeah, and this is like, what if that, but it was like written and performed.
It was written that way from the start.
Yeah. So it's that same kind of style and vibe, but like the writing and the acting and performance, it's all so much more like natural feeling. To where it's almost like it's like a character will show up and they'll speak, and it'll remind you of like, I don't know, like the way characters in like Tenchi Muyo or something spoke, but they sound like real people at the same time. And it's like, oh wow, I kind of like fuck with this in a way I didn't like expect to. So all that is to say is just like there's a level of effort in this game to like put together all the pieces of like character and world and style, and it just all comes together really like effortlessly in a way that's just like, man, I just like being here.
Good vibes
really,
only.
yeah, good vibes, immaculate vibes. But beyond just vibes, because it's like everything is working together and sort of like telling the story of this. I guess it's a series, a universe, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, because it's 2 games now. But I didn't even feel like I was playing a sequel, because it's like they take the stuff they came up with before, and then like, here's a totally new scenario with a new protagonist, blah blah blah. So just like base
And it's
level,
done elegantly.
Sorry.
And it's done like elegantly.
Yeah, super elegantly. Like it just comes together really, really well.
I always love it when that happens.
Yeah, it's really striking. Like it really made me think about like, man, this really doesn't happen that often. Especially when you're looking at like something that's so obviously a bundle of like tributes to other things that the creators liked. It's like, oh, they really like live and breathe this stuff, and it doesn't just feel like a bunch of like fucking references slapped on top of each other. Like you're walking into a fucking Hot Topic or something, but it's supposed to be like a story.
I'm sorry.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
You know what I mean?
That was peak. That was peak. It was good.
That cut to the core of it right there.
Oh my god, I knew exactly what my man was saying. Lucas White, ladies and gentlemen. One of the most talented critics in the business.
It's like walking into a fucking Hot Topic. But yeah, like, and it's weird because I ended up giving this game a 9, and I haven't talked about the premise yet. It's a very, very, very short and to the point game. I don't think it's more than like 5-6 hours long. And like I was saying, there's not really like puzzles to it. There's like one kind of gameplay thing, and it's like repeated. It's like the one puzzle type thing, and it's like barely a puzzle. Like you can't fail it. Like there's frustrating parts where you have to kind of like tinker with it maybe, but it's really just like a visualization of something that's happening than anything else. It's the actual premise of the game. This world is like, it's very cyberpunky, and the whole thing is like there's these people that have psychic powers. They're espers, and they're sort of like intersecting with this very like cyberpunky technology driven world. So of course there's a lot of like political power and like controlling the stuff, blah blah blah. So there's this corporation, of course, that has a lot of the stuff on lockdown. And you are this character who is an Esper, and you're like this barely young adult woman who has like vague mind reading powers, but the whole conceit is like, we have the Neurodiver. It's the first synthetic Esper, and it's this cute little tentacle monster that lives in a little aquarium.
I love when Lucas puts on his commercial voice.
Thank you. And it goes like, whenever it has the line of dialogue and it doesn't really, it just shows like bloop. It's just blorp. It'll be like, right, Neurodiver, and it goes bloop. It's very cute. But it like basically like it'll like grab onto someone's arm and she can actually like enhance her powers and dive into their memories and like actually like touch them and tinker with them and stuff. So it turns into this whole mystery where it's like she's learning to use her powers, and then of course there's like another Esper that can already do this shit without the funny tentacle monster, and they're actually like causing problems. And then it turns out things are like way more like directly connected, so on and so forth. And like the big problem is like there's a lot of really cool stuff that you kind of run into. Like I said, the world building is really interesting. There's like characters you run into that are really cool, and it's like every little scenario there's like nuggets of interesting stuff happening. And then like the story starts to ramp up with the conflict between like the main character and the bad guy, and then like as fast as it starts to ramp up, it's like over. And it's like, well, wait a second, what about all the other cool shit you guys were hinting to here and here and here and here and here? It's just like none of it goes anywhere.
Is that because they're leaving threads open for like follow-ups, or just
maybe
not exactly well executed on that regard?
It's one of those things where it's like, it's definitely an indie game. It's definitely a game that like, it took a long time to make it, and I think like the pandemic happened right as it was like getting started, whatever. But it's like, maybe it's just like one of those things where it's like, oh, we have so much like cool stuff buzzing around in our heads, and we want to kind of sow some seeds or whatever. And it's just like they're so good at building the world that it's like, but I want to know more about this. But it's like, no, we don't really have like time for that. Sorry. And it's just kind of like, well, damn. And it's like one of those things where it's like, I'm disappointed, but I'm disappointed because I want more. In like a really like kind of positive way, because it's not like
your interest is peaked.
Yeah, like the still like the central story is like told and complete and interesting. It's just like over really fast, and I just like, man, but I want more of this and I want more of that, and like, I'm mad about being dissatisfied because I was having a great time. What the hell?
My man played the first build of Duke Nukem Forever and was like, win the full release.
Exactly. Fuck. Yeah, so it's like this. It's this indie game that really is firing on all cylinders and doesn't really do anything wrong. And is very like, we've been talking this whole time about like games need to be like, more focused, more, holistic. And this is a game that's like, here's a visual novel. It kind of looks like an old 80s PC game from Japan, and you're kind of clicking on things, but you're not, screwing around with sliding, boxes around and stuff, or obscure math problems and whatever, collecting picarats and doing everything in the world to like justify people's money at a retail store. It's just like, no, we just want to tell this story and have these like cool stylistic things, and then like we're gonna get out, we're done, and that's it. Here's what we have, and please enjoy it. And it's like, man, that just feels good.
Yeah.
Total opposition to like Rebirth, where it's like, I'm having a great time, but there's just so much stuff you're just throwing in here over and over and over again, getting in your own way.
video game disease, as you said.
Unforced errors. Yeah.
Exactly. So and then, like,
It'll kill you in a baseball game, and it's worse for you in a video game.
it really is. I don't know. It was weird because, like, I didn't realize I was giving it a 9 when I ended up giving it a 9. Because
my hand moved on its own.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes, like, when you're writing a review, and you just kind of like let your like stream of consciousness take over. At least that's kind of like I do that a lot.
I'm similar, so
yeah, you just kind of like end up in places you weren't really like thinking about beforehand.
I've had several notable writers that I've worked with argue that is what makes great writing. Opening yourself up to a possibility, see where it goes.
Yeah.
For what it's
Alternatively,
worth, Lucas.
It makes a lot of sense.
Alternatively, it makes editing your drafts a bitch because you're like, well,
it can.
This whole area could probably just be moved around, but I can't because then the entire flow just goes.
That's why you get that's why you get more artful with it. You get more practiced, and then those sorts of things don't really happen. But anyways, all that to say, if I want to take it in a profoundly less serious direction, people are accusing us of being bought off by major publishers and stuff like that, when really it's not about bribes. It's more of a Jennifer's Body situation.
Hey, big ups for referencing Jennifer's Body. That movie fucking rips. B, who are these motherfuckers and what Arby's parking lot can I meet them in?
Arby's, Walmart, Denny's, whichever one.
What the fuck is up, Denny's?
It's the stage select on a fighting game. That's one of those.
You think I can pay rent on this job? God damn!
In this economy?
That's. I want to know who it was. Give me a name. I just want to talk. I just want to talk.
I just want to let my fists do the talking.
Listen, as Aerosmith once said many, many years ago, don't get mad, get even. And who am I getting even with?
Big old dummies. But anyways, yeah, I thought you would all appreciate me taking the door off the hinges and throwing it down the hallway.
No kidding.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Yeah.
There's splinters everywhere.
Anyways, Lucas, back to you.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's like, it was interesting to have that sort of like knee-jerk reaction of like, oh shit, I don't like how I feel right now. I'm like upset that this ended, but then to sit down and write and be like, no, actually that was sick. And I'm only upset because it was so good that I would have easily spent like another, I don't know, 3 hours here just to like do more.
That's how I felt of Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood.
Yeah. It is better to leave you wanting more than wishing you had less.
Yeah,
that is so true.
Say what you will about Jerry Seinfeld and his views now, but he was right to quit when Seinfeld was still the hot shit that it was.
Same with Dave Chappelle, who also ended up in the same fucking place. What a cunt.
But Chappelle Show is like one of the all-time greats, which is, it's crazy to me how few episodes of that show actually exist when you think about the cultural impact that they had.
How quotable
Kris,
it is.
when you edit this, feel free to take that out. But seriously, Dave Chappelle, what a fucking... You could just insert a long ass bleep here.
At least he's not Jim Brewer.
Oh Jesus! Yes, thank fuck, thank fuck. Because hey, if you're talking about Seinfeld or Chappelle, at least they're funny.
Or they were anyway.
But anyways,
and they had more than one joke.
Anyways,
but
all that, but yeah. So the game,
Neurodiver.
The game you were talking about is Read Only Memories Neurodiver.
Neurodiver. Yeah.
So which is the sequel to what is it?
2064
Read Only Memories. Yeah. And then the next game will be Neurodiver : something else.
Yeah.
And then they'll just keep continuing down that road.
Did the sequel to Valhalla ever come out? Because every time these two games are linked in my mind somehow, just Valhalla
Same.
and this.
I got
them
confused so many times.
Yeah. I guess it's just the style of, cyberpunk kind of visual novel, indie game, similar styles, but I don't know. But now because of you mentioning that and me thinking about it, it's like, damn, I wonder if Nirvana's out yet.
I don't think so. I still need to play that too. That always looked interesting.
I liked
Valhalla
it.
slaps. I love it.
It's so interesting that I happened upon Valhalla and Red Strings Club so close together, given how similar they are. But for whatever reason, I have no idea why I stopped playing Valhalla and I finished Red Strings Club. But, I don't know. I've been meaning to go back to it and to play 2064, but I just never got around to it. But yeah, it's good to hear that it's great. Kris, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about this week?
Well, I'll talk about something briefly that's kind of interesting. So amidst, my playing V-Rising and Hades 2 a lot this week, as I mentioned last time. But a lot of my time...
feast for Chris Cornelisse this week.
Hold on. Yeah, right. That's pretty good.
I'm not gay, but Odysseus. Anyway,
listen, Hades especially is one of those games where if you don't want to fuck everybody in that cast, I don't know what to do with you.
Yeah, there is somebody there for you. Even more so in 2 because it has some very diverse styles now.
Listen,
I already know who I'm looking out for. I already know. But
in the immortal words of GNR, right? If you've got the money, we've got your disease, baby.
Yeah. I'm on the lookout. I already have seen somebody that appeals to my interests, and Will knows exactly what I'm all about. But I am
Love
open.
you, boo.
Yeah, I am open.
Look, I sat there and
persuaded.
edited specifically the clip of you going, "Damn."
Yeah.
So I was there.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody needs somebody in their life that makes them go, "Damn."
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But anyways, yeah.
And yeah.
I'm going to be playing... I have not bought Hades 2 yet because I'm desperately trying. I was scrambling to finish Rebirth, and now I'm playing Talos Principle 2, which I am in the home stretch of, and I'm trying to stay focused. I got those horse blinders on. I'm just like, I'm not looking at this over here. I'm not looking at Nemesis. Yeah. I'm not looking at all these other people. I'm just trying to finish the philosophy puzzle game right now.
So I won't spoil it because that wasn't what I wanted to sit on, but I'm most of the way through most of the content that's out in it. Like I've gotten to the end. Even that's a mechanical spoil. So I'll just say I've done most of what's there right now. And it's a lot. There is a lot in Hades 2 already. So it's great. It will be great. I'm, Supergiant be Supergiant. So, but what actually took a lot of my time surprising this week, and I actually wanted to talk about it more because I've been playing World of Warcraft for a long time, as you know. But they dropped this...
My name is Chris Cornelisse, and I'm an addict.
Yeah, we all know. I replaced it with FF14, and when FF14 shit the bed, I went right back. So
My name is Chris Cornelisse, and I'm an addict.
Yeah.
Yes.
But hey, if you're going to be an addict, you might as well be addicted to something good.
It's true.
And
listen, your
cooking
choices are between peak and peak. You could do worse.
That's true.
Pretty much. But so
that's like me with fighting games.
It's true. Brian, for whatever else, the problems that Brian has, and Brian has many problems, like all of us, he is a sinner.
It's true.
He needs to find
literally
alcohol.
He plays sin.
But literally, he is a sinner. Literally. If you've never been hit by Brian Barnett's Sun Dipper, you are missing out. Yes, I know exactly the words that I said. That is the name of the move now.
Yeah.
But Brian has immaculate fucking taste in fighting games. So, as Kris does in MMOs. Continue, Kris.
Yes.
So what's happening at the moment in WoW is because we're in the lull between expansions, right? Dragonflight is officially, the story is wrapped. They're doing the occasional little quest or thing to kind of lead in towards the next story, which is going to be like a longer story arc. And the next expansion, The War Within, is in alpha at the moment, and that's looking good, but I'm not following that too closely, not in the alpha. So in the meantime, they have like the kind of a victory lap season where it's like, here are all the raids on a rotating weekly thing where they get buffed and you can get the gear at the, at the current item level, just something to play and chase while you wait. But they've also been doing other little projects on the side, because ever since all the scandals and shit that happened in Activision Blizzard years ago, and, more than any other team at Blizzard, it seems like the WoW team really took a lot of that to heart, shuffled things around, and there's been a lot of like deep dives and interviews and creators and such going in and giving really pretty good unbiased conversations and such with a lot of them, and putting all that up open, basically showing a lot of the process, more so than has ever been open with the WoW developers for the longest time. They're really good about being clarity and showing clarity and such now. So no doubt there's still drama behind the scenes. They are still Activision Blizzard, and Microsoft now, which...
Yeah.
Can of worms.
In fairness to Microsoft, I'm not going to defend them on any other point than this. They're an actual company.
Yeah.
Unlike Activision Blizzard, an actual company.
Making real stuff.
Making real shit.
I agree, but counterpoint, they have axed more studios this year than they have released games.
Listen, I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that, leave that there, let that sit in the room for a second, and then...
I was thinking about all the killer studios that Microsoft has like just shuttered, like Ensemble, fucking FAFSA, right, was them, fucking Lionhead was them, fucking
FAFSA?
Tango was them, FASA, right? That was the, they bought them and then they shuttered them.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're revealing your academic roots.
Don't talk to me about fucking academics.
you said FAFSA.
I think that's the name of the studio. Did they not buy and
I'd
shutter
have to look
FAFSA?
into it. I don't know. The highlights have obviously been Tango, because it puts...
All right. Hold up. I'm looking at this right now. Who did they? They were FASA shuttered by Microsoft. Fuck you, Brian.
No, it sounded like you said, Will. Jesus
Sounds
Christ.
like you said FAFSA.
It sounded like you said
FAFSA.
FAFSA.
FAFSA
FAFSA is what it sounded like you said.
Warrior motherfucker.
Anyways, I was making a fucking FAFSA joke because you used to teach.
Listen, don't talk to me about it.
And you also went to school.
All right?
Eventually.
I did. I was brought along against my will, and then brought others along against their will, and c'est la vie. However, Microsoft's dedication to shuttering good studios is matched only by Electronic Arts. So,
anyways, let's get back to what Kris was trying to talk about.
Fuck you, Brian.
Uh-oh.
Is Kris here? Oh no, he's got that faraway look. But I think it might actually just be Australian internet at large again.
The power of Microsoft
God.
Studio closures deleted Kris from the internet.
Oh no, terrible.
Pour one out, ladies and gentlemen. I think we should make it a rule that everybody should have to start this drink with a cocktail.
Oh,
We should start this drink with a cocktail?
This show.
Inception. Yo, Doc, I heard you like drinks, so let's start this drink with another drink.
I meant to say show with a drink, and then I was like, that's not specific enough. You know how you're...
So speaking of game industry elves, while we wait for Kris to come back, something that happened while we were recording.
Oh, no.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Nintendo acquired Shiver Entertainment from Embracer Group.
That is the best possible thing that could have happened to
Isn't that
studio.
fucking crazy?
Embracer, listen,
wild.
I'm sure Embracer has at some point in their livelihood as a corporation done something that was good, but I've never seen it.
Right.
That studio is a walking L farm, right? Like,
I feel like all the wins that they have were just wins that they inherited from THQ Nordic.
It's fucking facts, bro. Like, can we talk for a second? Like, while we're waiting for Kris to get back here, how shit Embracer is. Do you understand how much worse you have to be than EA and Microsoft to end up at the top of a shit list? Do you have any fucking concept? We have studios We have publishers, not studios, with decades of studio closures, and you have matched that in the span of like 2 years. That's how much you suck. That's how much you are terrible. That is incredible. You have to try to be that bad.
It's pretty amazing.
Fucking
Yeah, like
Swedish
it's
motherfuckers, depending on the Saudis to bail them out. God damn.
maidenless. It was wild though, like Nintendo acquiring a company that does really good Switch ports. Like what? Like,
Yeah,
what
didn't
does
they do
that mean?
Hogwarts Legacy and something else?
They did
Mortal
in
Kombat.
K1, I would say, and 11. Let me just say the line for the people at home. That is a common Nintendo W, and they took their shot. That studio's gonna exist.
Oh, good.
Unlike what would have happened with Embracer, where they were betting on Saudi oil money to bail them out of their stupid ass decisions.
But I wonder what function they're gonna, perform at Nintendo itself. Like, will they be doing like in-house porting of third-party stuff? Will they be doing like merc work, kind of like the Luigi's Mansion people?
Listen,
or just kind of like, we know the Switch really well, so we're just gonna fucking.
Listen, Lucas, I understand the point that you're trying to make here, and I'm not trying to refute it. However, counter-argument, those people are going to have jobs.
Yeah, whatever.
Oh, that's great.
Whatever else they're going to do at Nintendo, it's probably going to be better than what they were going to do.
Yeah,
that's
what the
true.
fuck was Embracer going to have them do? Like,
anyways, but yeah,
probably
Lucas, please
just
continue.
Passively generate money because they're like, oh, they make these good Switch ports. They'll just keep doing
Brian,
that. We'll
you and I
collect
could never
dollars.
run something as badly as Embracer has run literally everything that they own.
If you and I were in charge, things would be going a lot differently. But
listen, all I'm saying was things would be hornier and sales would be up 150%. That's all I'm saying. We would be fucking cooking.
Okay, two things real quick, and then I do want to get back to what Lucas was saying. Mum Jum in the chat says, you guys are putting drinks in your drinks? That's how we know you've got that selling out money. Damn it! We've been found out. We've been found out.
Allegations.
The instant that you hear of me mixing bourbon with vodka, I invite you to come to my house and kill me.
Yeah. I mean, but
I'm not mixing drinks with drinks.
But Will, a car bomb. I mean, that's really a drinkception.
No.
Now, I don't know that you're into that because I've never seen you drink one. But anyways,
listen, you have absolutely had drinks with me. What are you talking about?
No. I've never seen you drink a car bomb.
Oh, I love car bombs. But the thing with a car bomb, right, is a car bomb is temporary. It's Guinness, Jameson, and what's the fucking third thing?
Car bombs are temporary. Drinks are forever.
No, but seriously, like, you have to drink a car bomb really quickly, otherwise it goes bad. It'll curdle.
Yeah.
You drop that shit in and immediately drink it. Right? Like, it's not like...
Yeah.
Motherfucker, if you go to any Irish bar and ask for a car bomb, you're paying like $10. We're not rich. Who is Mum Jum? Go to a bar. I'll take you. Come to New York. Like, we're not sold
Or
out.
Will, you can come down here because Mum Jum lives in the same city as me, and then you can hang out with the two of us and Ronnie. It'll be a party. Anyways,
Listen,
on the
you name it, time and place, man. We'll be down there.
I'll do a car bomb, but I'll do a Jaeger bomb.
That's even more degenerate. That's not better.
I didn't say it was.
anyways, I love this bomb talk. Oh, Mum Jump says, forget the car bomb, get those flaming Dr. Peppers. I'm down. I've also got gin drinks and stuff. Oh, Mum Jump says he'll bring the bourbon. There we go.
A man after my own heart. Listen, to all the listeners of the Platformers podcast, bourbon was invented in my home state, which is Virginia. It was not invented in Kentucky. Those people are fucking lying to you, right? Lucas knows, as a fellow Virginian.
Kentucky. It's true.
And
as
also,
a fellow Virginian.
Also, on the other hand, I do have some sad news, which is that Chris's internet has completely died, and he's not going to be able to make it back for the rest of the show. So we're going to wrap without him, and he's going to get to more WoW stuff next week. But
Chris, we love you. Can Lucas, finish your thought, and then I have a thing I'd love to close on, Brian, unless you have something else.
I'll dip into something real quick, and then I'll hand it over to you to close us out.
I'm going to call out the hypocrisy of this medium, man.
Oh, shit.
Oh my gosh.
Let's go!
Lucas.
Okay. Yeah, I just find myself like the obvious thing is like, thank God someone else has been able to escape Embracer Group before.
Bro, can we talk about how Crystal Dynamics is an imminent risk of closure? Literally,
they're double fucked. They're double fucked because they're also on Perfect Dark,
Crystal
right?
Dynamics. They make Tomb Raider.
They're helping the initiative out with Perfect
Embracer,
Dark. Yeah.
And they're with Microsoft. They're getting fucked from two different angles right now.
Like,
which sucks because I have friends that work there.
I know people who work at Crystal Dynamics. This sucks. This is a devil's three-way where nobody wins.
It's true.
Shame too, because like they were cooking at Square Enix.
Dude, the Rise and the Tomb Raider reboot, classiques.
Yeah, they're good.
Classiques.
I like Shadow too, honestly.
Shadow was
same.
Eidos Montreal, I think. I don't think we can attribute that to CD.
Oh really? Oh okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, Crystal Dynamics worked on Avengers, and then Eidos Montreal worked on, instead of getting the Deus Ex sequel that we deserved, worked on Shadow.
Well, that like Predator Mud thing they did in Shadow was dope.
Yeah,
Shadow
that was one of the best. That was the best moment in that whole game.
Shadow has some great ideas. I'm just saying, like, you're gonna fucking close Crystal Dynamics?
Yeah, you better not.
Really? You better not. I will go to GameStop and knock over magazine racks, bro. I will make my displeasure known.
They don't even have any of those left.
I will knock over displays. That Halo 3 display that they've had in the window for 15 years, it's going down, bro. It has no chance.
Knock over their fucking Funko Pop wall.
Oh
that would cause the most damage.
I'm gonna light their Funko Pops on fire, bro. Anyway, Chris,
don't breathe this.
Yeah. So
I'm not legally responsible for the things that I've said.
That's a Will It Blend reference, by the way. So you guys just enjoy that.
Oh my God.
Lucas,
anyway,
you were on the cusp of brilliance.
Yeah, aside from the embracer-ness of the situation, it's really weird to me that Nintendo is the one that bought it. Because it's like you have Shiver, what's the other one? Panic Button that does the other really good Switch ports. Mm-hmm. And there's a third one, this name I can't, but there's like those three companies that do really good Switch ports, but it's all like third-party stuff. Because it's like, well, Nintendo knows how the fucking Switch works. They don't need help making things happen there. I
have a thought.
But we have these other companies.
If you'll tolerate it for 30 seconds.
Yeah, go for it.
I would invite our listeners to go look up the sales of the PS5 and then the sales of the Nintendo Switch. Yeah. Realize how hard Nintendo is cooking literally everybody else in the hardware business. And then be like, cool, they're making a PS4 level console, which is what the rumors are. Even if they're not, right? Even if it's like less than that. Mm-hmm. What's the most popular console on the market? Where does everybody want to be? It's not fucking Sony, and it sure as shit isn't Microsoft.
Yeah.
They're trying to bring their partners in and be like, listen, if you're having trouble, we've got you. Nintendo realizes how hard they're cooking, and they're not going to stop.
Which is good. That's good for everybody.
It is. But I want to recontextualize this for everybody, because everyone's like, oh, the PS5, blah, blah, blah. Like, please understand that Nintendo is playing 8-dimensional chess. They've won. They won 15 years ago. It doesn't matter. We're waiting, like, if you've ever seen a great chess match, right? At a certain point, one of the masters knows that they're beat. And it just depends on how far they're willing to go for ego to keep playing. Mm-hmm. Nintendo has won. They won 10 moves ago. It's over. There is no game left. That's what they're playing for.
And like, now that I'm kind of like following my own train of thought, because I'm like, oh, what are they doing buying this like company that's really good at doing Switch ports? They don't really need that. But I guess like with the Switch 2, assuming everything we've heard about it is true, which probably, right, it's going to be backwards compatible. And with the Switch notoriously like having that sort of like peak gold rush era where it was like everyone was like, fuck, we got to port everything we can on the Switch, and then it's sort of like backfiring after like a little while.
Listen, the thing we need to context for our listeners, just briefly,
Mm-hmm.
there's a very real chance before the end of its life that the Switch outsells the PS2.
Oh yeah, it's headed that direction
Like,
for sure.
There is a. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but there is a real.
I believe
chance.
right now it's top 3 selling
it's
hardware of all
behind
time.
the PS2, the DS, another fucking Nintendo system, and itself. That's where it is. There is a real chance that it is the best-selling home console of all time. Once again, chasing the graphical unicorn, it doesn't work for you, baby. Nintendo sells at a profit.
For sure. And like to that point, there's a very smart thing to do to port your game to the Switch, but in some cases it's just not like feasible. And a lot of these like companies that have been making these ports have been just doing incredible work as far as they can take it, and that stuff, like, people will buy that. People will buy The Witcher 3 on the Switch, even though it's not perfect, it's still really close. And the only thing that's really backfired is like we've seen companies try and be like, oh shit, that's more work than we thought it would be. And you end up with stuff like the one time 2K tried to put WWE on the Switch, and it was like, oh shit, we can't do that, whoops, and then they didn't try again. So my thought is like maybe they're getting Shiver and is like, you can help us. I don't want to say reverse engineer, but it's like if they want to sort of like, hey, you come in here and you, for us, make whatever fucking Hogwarts Legacy work better on the Switch 2, because you've already done that. You already know how to like do this stuff. That way we don't have to worry about it, And then like if they're working with like a PS4 level Switch 2, that's going to open the door wider probably for more ports of third-party stuff. And maybe this is going to be like their new division of like, make all this shit work. We're not going to bother leaving it up to, these publishers to like, fuck with our reputation by putting, another crappy WWE port on here and, screwing it up for everybody, right? Maybe that's what these people are coming in for.
I would like to quickly point out the intelligence of Lucas's point here, right? Like, Microsoft buys shit because they think that their brand will be good, right? Whether it's Call of Duty or Starfield or Elder Scrolls or whatever the fuck it is, right? Doom, whatever.
Because that's what they need help with.
Right. Sony buys stuff because they're like, we like this game. Nintendo buys stuff because they're like, we have a plan. And that is the distinction that nobody seems to understand. Nintendo does not need other people to sell their hardware. They will do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They have been playing a very long game. Everybody else has been playing short term, make the line go up. Oh, Horizon's popular, we'll make a dozen Horizon spinoffs. That game is shit. In 15 years, nobody will care.
Now, there are a lot of people who don't care.
Now, God help Microsoft for anything that isn't fucking Doom or fucking the Elder Scrolls, right? But Nintendo has been playing the long game. It's like playing a game of poker, right? And you fold for a few hands, and you fold for a few hands, and maybe you bid for a couple hands, and then you get the one that you want. And you still have most of your money. And now everybody else is in a different position. At some point, I've been saying this for years, and Brian has been saying this for years, and Lucas has been saying this for years, and Kris has been saying this for years, and I will do that for him because he's not here. The bill comes due. Nintendo has been playing for when the bill comes due, and nobody else is.
Also, real talk, the top 3 most recognized IP of all time, Nintendo owns 2 of those 3.
What's the third one?
Star Wars.
That makes sense. I'm guessing the first two are Mario and Pokemon.
Flip them, and you've got it. Pokemon's
Yeah, I was
number one, then Mario, then Star Wars.
As far
Actually,
yeah,
Star Wars might be two. But
I was thinking Pokemon, Star Wars, Mario in that order.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but like, Pokemon is the most profitable intellectual property to ever exist. Think about that for about 10 seconds, and then realize that Nintendo owns the most profitable property in the video game space to ever exist, and that's Mario. They don't share the ownership with anyone. Pokemon, they share.
Right.
And this is the difference. This is the difference between chasing the graphical unicorn and not. Because Nintendo sells their hardware at a profit, and they make decisions conservatively, and they plan things out, and they have gameplay reasons for all the stuff that they're doing, and they have this loyal fan base that they've cultivated, they can afford to take risks like the Wii, like the Wii U, and stuff like that, because they have this huge battle chest. And then when they have a flop, it doesn't bankrupt them and close all of their studios, because they've made prudent decisions. They've planned things out. They've been like, we've got a buffer zone. Let's try something out. If it hits, and it's huge. And if it doesn't hit, well, you know what? We'll try something else next time.
At one point, Nintendo was sitting on $140 billion in cash.
That's crazy.
That is an insane number. That is enough money to buy Sony outright. Yeah. In cash. For a check. In the immortal words of NFL great wide receiver Randy Moss, when you're rich, you don't write checks. Straight cash, homie. That's the game Nintendo is playing.
Yeah.
And that's the game nobody else is. And when people are like, oh, I can't believe, like, you know, like that tweet that went viral I did a couple weeks ago about Nintendo not caring about the graphical unicorn. That's the game that they're playing. They've been in this business for a long time. And you can be like, oh, you're a Nintendo fan, but whatever. I don't care. I'm recognizing smart business decisions. This industry is collapsing on itself. Nintendo has built themselves a path forward, and the only thing that they have to do at this point is do the shit they're already doing, because they looked at this 15 years ago and said, this shit is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Everybody else...
Well, the interesting thing about that is there are people at other organizations, like one of the previous leaders of PlayStation, who said the same shit, but he said it as he was heading out the door because people didn't listen to him while he was there.
Right. But the thing is, people listen to the guys at Nintendo because they've built a sustainable system. They have people they respect in leadership positions. They don't have artistic turnover. You have a motherfucker who's been working on Zelda for 30 years. Find me somebody like that at PlayStation, and I guarantee you won't, because they don't exist. This is what you build for.
They don't have games that have lasted that long.
Jak and Daxter didn't last that long. Metroid and Clank came close, but like, Uncharted isn't gonna last. The Last of Us isn't gonna last. Horizon sure as shit isn't gonna last. They're chasing the unicorn, and eventually the road runs out, and you're driving off a cliff. And you think, Jesus Christ, what if I'd done something else? Nintendo, on the other hand, knows exactly what they're about, exactly what they're doing, and they're going to do it, and they're going to keep doing it. And when the clock strikes 12 and everything turns into a pumpkin, Nintendo is still going to be there, and everybody else is going to be like, what the fuck happened?
My horses turned back into rats.
Nobody in this industry gets this. This is a long-term business proposition. We have convinced ourselves that we're mainstream because we make a lot of money. That's not how this works.
Yeah. It's incredible, like, the way the Wii U did flop the way it did. And because of the battle chest and all the stuff they were kind of doing, they were able to, like, sit there and be like, well, why did this happen? And what is something we can change to, like, patch that hole? It wasn't like a reactionary, like, oh shit, we need to, like, do something now to, you know, make the numbers go back up. It was like, well, okay, what happened? HD was really hard, and we're, like, competing with ourselves with our handhelds. So what if we just, like, smashed it together into one?
Yeah. We've always
like,
been crushing on our handhelds. Like, our handhelds are always really popular. Game Boy, GBA, DS, 3DS, all these things. They've all been great. They've all been popular. They've got access to things like Pokemon and stuff like that. The home consoles have generally been popular, but there have been some dips. GameCube, for as good as it was, didn't really sing with people because it was counter to the PS2. And even the Xbox had a lot of fans. The Wii U, even though it had great games, it wasn't it. And yeah, they were able to, and this is the thing that I'm always advocating for, which is the freedom to make mistakes, learn from them, and then come back and do it again. This is what one of the most depressing things about our industry now is that, like, I've talked about this a bunch of times, but like, imagine a world where Street Fighter comes out and then that series gets canceled. Yeah. And we never get Street Fighter 2.
That's where we are.
The world, the world would be so different. Will knows how different would the world be if we never got Street Fighter 2.
I'm going to say this, and to Brian's point, which is, I think, maybe one of the smartest we've ever raised on an episode of this podcast that I've been on. We talk about great sequels, right? People make lists. It goes up on IGN, it goes up on Kotaku, it goes up on GameSpot, it goes on whatever the fuck. Any answer other than Street Fighter 2 is wrong. Because no other answer invented a genre. That's what Street Fighter 2 did. Nobody gives a shit about Street Fighter 1. You find a person who plays Street Fighter 1, they're as old as I am, and as much of a sicko as me. It was literally a big balloon that you smashed in. That's what it was. It is not a modern fighting game. Street Fighter 2 took that idea and said, what if we did motion inputs? What if we put a joystick and buttons? It is the greatest leap between a sequel we have ever seen. It invented a genre. That is not an exaggeration. That is not anything else beyond that. It is literally what Capcom did. We are in an environment right now where that is impossible. You are either a success out of the gate, or we will cancel you, we will fire everybody that made you, and we will close your studio.
I mean, it doesn't even matter if you're a success half the time, though.
Yeah. Right. Hi-Fi Rush, by all extents, and a success, an enormous success. Won all kinds of awards. Tango, literally swimming in a award,
which is not easy to get.
No, and what did that get them? You're
done.
The
story ended up being, you're between games. If we greenlight another game, you will have to hire people. We can't do that, so goodbye forever.
Imagine.
That's insane.
Being Microsoft and talking about having Japanese development studios for, I don't know, since the Xbox 360 fucking came out 15 years ago. How important that was. And finally, acquiring a studio. Because they thought about acquiring Team Ninja, they thought about acquiring Tecmo Koei, they thought about acquiring, right? And on and on and on. Mistwalker, the guys who made Lost Odyssey. And you don't do it. You don't pull the trigger because you're scared. And then, through sheer luck, by also buying the guys who made Doom and the guys who made The Elder Scrolls, you also get the studio founded by the guy who made Resident Evil 4.
That's about as big as wins get.
And then, they make a game for very little money, new IP, mind you, which is increasingly rare in this space, that does well, made on a budget, by all accounts makes its money back, and wins awards.
And not only is it a new IP, it's a novel gameplay conceit.
There's nothing else like Hi-Fi Rush. And you look at those people and you say, fuck this studio, close them.
We spent $100 billion acquiring studios, and now we can't afford to let you make a sequel to the only worthwhile fucking thing we've put out in 2 years.
It is insane.
When it came out, there were a lot of people who said this is the best game that Xbox has put out this generation.
And it's if it's not in the best, it is top 3 at worst.
Yeah.
This was a studio that took risks. 2 people prototyped this game. You can look this up. For several years to make this game a reality. They made it on next to nothing. They prototyped the hell out of it, and they got shuttered for it. And it wasn't like The Evil Within didn't make money, because it did. Imagine having a studio founded by Shinji Mikami that went on to make new IPs in an interesting space where no one works anymore, because realistically nobody makes action games that isn't Capcom or Team Ninja anymore, or From. New IP, original.
Or
you own
Omega
it.
Force.
Fuck yeah, to be honest. Omega Force is a little bit underrated. But like, you have this studio. They have the talent to make whatever they want. They're located in the market that you claim that you want. It makes money. It's made on a low budget, and you shutter them? This is what their reward is for winning a BAFTA?
Yeah.
This?
Yep.
Justifiably, this has caused a lot of people in the Xbox camp to have some scales fall from their eyes.
Because if you can close Tango off of this, who's next? Can you close
Literally, the discourse right now is what's going to happen in Ninja Theory.
Right. What's going to happen in Ninja Theory, right? Like, Acclaim Studio made a lot of, at very worst, good games.
And, like, realistically speaking, they're probably fine. Because Ninja Theory is one... Like, Ninja Theory is probably one row on the spreadsheet, whereas ZeniMax was probably, like, you know, it probably eats up, you know, the fucking moron abacus plinker that was making these decisions probably looks at those things and is like, we need to make this one like that. And then they see this one, they just ignore it.
But then you raise really unfortunate questions. Xbox owns id, and I don't think people understand this. You own the most important American studio that is not named Blizzard. You own the guys that make Doom and Quake and Rage and fucking Wolfenstein. You're telling me those guys should have their heads on a chopping block? Literally the greatest first-person shooter developer that has ever existed.
Yeah, I'm actually more worried about machine games than I would be like Ninja Theory.
Yeah, right? Like, what if the Indiana Jones games doesn't do numbers? Then what?
Yeah,
you close them too?
But the thing that sucks, and this is part of the IGN piece that came out, which was a really good piece, which was we used to believe that making a good critically acclaimed game that made money would insulate you from these sorts of things, and now we know that that was a lie.
Listen, Brian, if we've been really honest with ourselves, really deeply honest,
yeah,
that's been a lie for at least 15 years.
It has been, but people would have you would be forgiven for having some faith still in that idea, I think. It was not a universal, it was not a guarantee, because nothing was guaranteed, but it was also considered, one, it was considered bad form, and two, it was considered bad business. And now that we've got people like the people running WB just destroying finished movies for tax breaks, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I feel
mask
bad.
Fell all the way off.
Yeah.
It's all the way off.
We're not even pretending anymore.
Yeah.
I feel bad for a number of studios. I feel bad for id, the greatest first-person shooter developer of all time, bar none, not even close. I feel bad for Crystal Dynamics. I feel bad for Bethesda, to be honest, even though I don't like Bethesda games. I feel bad for Machine Games, because God knows what they make isn't going to make money.
Indiana Jones is such a, like... That's not a quadruple A IP anymore.
No, I mean, listen, Raiders...
all the respect in the world to Indiana Jones.
Raiders of the Lost Ark is 44 years old?
Yeah,
it's old.
Exactly. It is old in a way that you're not going to get people being like, oh, fuck, in the numbers that you think you will.
And it makes sense to a certain perspective of people, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
I would say maybe all the people in this call, even though Kris isn't here, like, if you ask me what's the greatest adventure film ever made, it's Raiders. And it's not close. They made that movie on basically nothing with fucking Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. Say whatever you want about Lucas. He was a great story guy. And Spielberg is one of the most talented American directors to ever work. And they made a classic. They made 3 of them. Before we started getting mad about Crystal Skull and the 5th one.
Yeah.
But the point is, we established certain things on where they were when they were made, and there's a reason Uncharted and Tomb Raider are compared to Raiders, because that's what they are. Right? Mm-hmm. You go back far enough, you find the origin, and I wish people were as enthused about Raiders as my wife and I am. Verb tenses are tricky. But the point being that, like, at a certain point, like, you have people who've never seen those films. A few years ago, one of my best friends, who's as old as I am, said, you ever seen Raiders? No. Okay, so we watched Raiders. It's amazing. Yeah. It's 40 years old. No.
Yeah, and to your point, like, those movies were made at the time on a low budget. Because they were, at the time, kind of risky. This game's going to have a fucking $200 million budget easy.
Right, and what do you do when people who are, you know, I don't want to throw shade at us, but, like, younger than us. We're in our 30s.
Yeah, they're not
some of you.
Listen, Brian, I was going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
I appreciate it.
Like, there's always people who are younger that look backwards. We do the same thing, and good for them. They're interested in history and blah, 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 blah. But like, in terms of, like, something that you're going to spend all of your money on and put out and expect to get all of your money back on, that's not what you do with, you know, a 40-year-old IP from a different medium.
No, and the shame is that I think that machine games will make a great game.
Oh yeah, it'll be great.
Really. I think that they will make an incredible video game. And what I have learned in the last few years is that the quality of your work does not matter. Nobody cares.
Well, we care, but we're not in charge of the purse strings.
Right, but you and I and Lucas and Kris and the people who feel like us were like the art of the art, right?
Mm-hmm.
That matters. We're dying. We're literally getting older and dying. Like, and the people who make that shit, they don't care. We talk about the 70s and the 80s as a renaissance for American film because people were willing to do crazy shit. Nobody thinks about this anymore, but Star Wars was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody expected that to be a success.
My dad, when he was at the Naval Academy, studying to be a submariner, was like, listen, you don't understand this because you can't, right? You're 30 years removed from it, but Star Wars was the only thing that played. I saw it in theaters like 14 times. That was it. That was all there was. Because it was so popular. We don't exist in that world anymore. We've all subdivided into our individual niches, and that's beautiful because we can have guys like me who are action game sickos, and guys like Lucas who can talk about visual novels, and guys like Brian who can talk about the latest indie game, and we can all talk about it with a degree of respectability. Mm-hmm. That's great. You don't have mega hits anymore. It doesn't exist. Everything is subdivided and subdivided and subdivided until we're a fraction of a percentage with nowhere else to go. And when you bet your entire budget when Skyrim was popular 15 years ago. Tell me how you think that's going to go.
Yeah.
We don't live in that world anymore, as sad as it is. Quality does not matter. And I wish that it did, but it doesn't. And every single person in this chat right now can think of at least 3 examples of quality does not matter. Where that game sold well and did well, and they made a fucking sequel to it, and the game that should have gotten something didn't. Or anything. It should have been a film or a television show or whatever. Second season, a sequel, whatever. That's where we are. We're in late capitalism, baby. Everything sucks.
Yeah, as sad as it is, Hollow Knight really should have gotten a sequel. It was so good.
Brother, I drafted...
It'll never happen. It's a real dumb shit.
I drafted fucking Silksong as a sequel to the first time I think I did like the games media fantasy thing.
Fantasy critic. Yeah.
And like 2019, that game still isn't fucking out.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's still on someone's draft every year.
That is not a criticism of the Hollow
said.
Knight devs. They should take as long as they want, but like that's where we are.
Yeah, no, I'm obviously joking because that game is going to come out and that game is great and it is getting a sequel, but the greater point remains. I'm just trying to add a little bit of levity to all of this dour stuff because as much as I can hope that people will understand that the lie of endless growth is just that and come back to their senses and try to focus on making good art that speaks to something human instead of looking at their pocketbooks. That's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee that after this collapse we're experiencing, we're going to end up in a better place. I hope we do. I'd like to nudge our industry into that direction as best I can with the, platforms that I have access to, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. But I don't want to go on any longer. I think it's about time.
And I have 5 minutes
for some popcorn. You need more time, Will?
I want to talk about Sins of a Solar Empire too.
Well, okay. First, in the chat, Mom Jump said the only other game sequel that was better than the original and created a new genre of games is 1992's Dune 2, the first real-time strategy game. It walked so that games like Warcraft, StarCraft, etc. could run. Anyways.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong.
Yeah.
As someone who is an RTS enjoyer, Dune 2 is the foundation upon which all things are built.
Yeah. It's pretty dope. Anyways, I wanted to put that out there. Then I wanted to say, Lucas, did you have any closing thoughts to that segment? Because I know we've meandered all over the place, and I didn't want to leave this and go to Sins of Solar Empire before you got to say your fill.
Yeah, I think what can be said mostly has been said. I think there are there's room and there's little pockets for optimism. Quality does matter in some cases. It's just like the complexity of making quality matter with a capital M is just really fucked up. Because of things it's not just quality versus an audience versus the bean counters. You're also looking at things like discoverability, which is a whole other angle and can of worms. It's you can make something amazing, and that doesn't mean people even see it, which sucks. But then there's other times where it's like somebody makes something awesome, and the right people do see it, and then it snowballs, and it's like that can still happen. It's just there are so many forces working against that all at the same time. To Brian's point, hopefully, like the other side of whatever's happening now looks better. And I hope if like the video games industry blows up and looks better on the other side, I hope the same shit happens to Google.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. Mum Jum in the chat, who's just full of gold tonight, says modern capitalism is not about making profit, but your profit needs to be bigger than last time or you're a failure, which is super sad. That's true.
Yep.
Which is ridiculous. Yeah, it's this is another lesson that can be learned from Nintendo, which is like being profitable is enough. The line doesn't have to go up so long as you. I mean, this is just like the lesson of capitalism writ large, which is just like you need to know when enough is enough, and you need to stop then. Which is, we talked about this earlier with Seinfeld and other things like that. Like it is better to stop while you're ahead than to keep hitting until you bust, because that's not the way. That's how the house wins. That's not how you win. That's not how all of us win. So anyways.
It's ironic too, because Nintendo is a publicly traded company and they just don't seem to like give a fuck. Like they do their quarterly reports and everything, and you hear like it's always like Nintendo announces a thing and then for some godforsaken reason their stock dips. There's been times where it's like something good happens and the stock ticks. It's like, what is wrong with you motherfuckers? But like you never hear like a response to that. That's really funny. They just don't care. It's like, this is what we're doing. Just deal with it. See you next quarter.
Yeah.
I have a thought.
Oh no.
Is it about that, or is it about something else?
It's about Sins of a Solar Empire.
All right, yeah, because I was just about to pass it over to you for that.
I can't believe you got us back on track.
What can I say?
Masterful gambit, sir.
Masterful gambit interrupting me doing the segue to you. All right, do it. Will, do it up. You got 5 minutes to save the world.
How pissed would you be if a video game wasn't doing the things that it said it was doing?
Pretty.
I'd be confused. I don't know if I'd be pissed. Depends on what it.
Confounded, frustrated.
The degree, yeah.
So Stardock is trying. Stardock released. I'm not going to say what I think they're doing because it'll probably get me slapped with lawyers. Stardock released Sins of a Solar Empire 2 on the Epic Games Store.
Mm-hmm.
As an early access game.
And they have a thing for that, like a label.
Yes.
To be clear, right?
Yes. They then removed that early access label, according to them, over a year ago. It's not a finished game. My guess is they had an exclusivity agreement with Epic. They required it to be on that store for X amount of time. And they decided to just change the version label to 1.1, or what was it, 1.2, 1.12? To say we've acknowledged that agreement. When they did that, I reviewed the game for IGN. It's not finished. Has no tutorial. Has no third faction that they promised. Just generally unfinished. Has a Y2K bug at one point that I was playing it, where when the RNG generator generates a certain number, the game just becomes not able to open. It just crashes. Which goes back to the way computer logic is programmed. At a certain number, it just ceases to function. And you'd think that they would know this, right? Because this seems like a fairly common thing to know, but apparently not. So the game just stopped working for 2 days. So I wrote a review and I gave it a 5. Now, Stardock has claimed that the official 1.0 launch is on Steam. I understand that. Steam is where all the money is, right? It's not a fucking Epic. However, I'm looking at your version history and it says 1.2.1. Does that seem a little funky to y'all?
It's a little weird.
I'm really curious about like when it hit 1.0 and if they like said anything.
They haven't said shit.
Yeah.
No press release, no nothing. They just removed the early access tag. And I'm thinking the reason that they did this was because they had a signed agreement with Epic that was said you have to be exclusive on our store for X amount of time. And I'm thinking that they wanted to release the game in August on Steam so they could make money. So they removed that thing so that they could get out of the you have to be exclusive on our store for X amount of time. Now I have developers coping and seething on the Steam store, on Twitter, about how I reviewed a game that wasn't released. Motherfucker, your version is 1.2.1. There's no early access label. You have to scroll to the bottom of the store to realize that the third faction isn't in the game, which you're advertising, by the way, higher up on the store. So I reviewed this game, and I've been dealing with all sorts of crap. You didn't play Sims 1? I did. I played it about a decade ago, by the by. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. At one point does a game become finished? I'm sure that all three of us would agree that a tutorial is the basic necessity for a video game, right?
Generally speaking.
Yeah. I'm sure that we would agree that releasing all three of the factions that we claim we've released would be the basic necessity, right?
One would say.
One would think. So I reviewed Sins of a Solar Empire 2, and I'm literally poorer for it because I bought the game to do it for IGN. Give it a 5. And at some point within the last few years, and I can't predict exactly the point that this was, we started becoming less angry at game developers for lying to us than we did at them for releasing unfinished games. Epic paid a certain amount of money for this game, and they're just not going to get it because the people at Stardock have decided this is a 1.0 release, even though it's not. And they're going to release it on Steam in August. And I'm wondering how the fuck we got here. That it's cool to just outright lie to your consumers. And the people who gave you money.
This feels like, I don't want to say unique, but I feel like the way in which this seems to have happened, allegedly.
There's no allegedly about it. This is what they did.
Right. But, you know.
For the sake of our lawyers, allegedly,
Yeah.
the game is not released. There is no early access label. There is no technical preview label. This is a game you can go onto the Epic Store and buy for $40 US.
I feel like I haven't heard of a chain of events like this before that I can think of, where a game is in early access itself has been a point of discourse for a while, but has generally become accepted as like, it's better to do it this way than to like put out a game that clearly needs more work. It's more like honest. And then a game will be in early access until either something bad happens and it just never leaves early access, or it eventually comes out of early access. And then they're like, well, it's a 1.0, and it's always like a big deal because it's like, oh shit, the game's finally out. And that usually is like helpful for, it's usually helpful for the game for that little bump of news. I'm struggling to think of a case where it's like, wait a second, this game is in early access. Everyone still seems to believe it's in early access, but it's sitting over here, and they like yanked the label off. and no one seems to have like brought attention to that or acknowledged it or anything until IGN notices.
You're not wrong because there is no example.
Yeah. I'm just like, what the fuck?
My understanding is this. Based on nothing beyond my own example. Epic pays for a period of exclusivity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually like a year.
How do you beat that? You put it in 1.0, right? When the CEO of your corporation goes on Twitter saying, I don't know why you reviewed this because it's been in this state for over a year, and your version is 1.2 or 1.1, sorry, 1.21.12, who's the fault there? 1.0 generally constitutes a full release, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at that with Multiverses right now, which had a lowercase controversy of its own by being it was in open beta and it had the open beta label. They were still taking money for it. And then like the problems with it kind of stacked up a little too much, and they were like, all right, we need to actually like go dark for a little while before we can do 1.0.
Yep.
But they went dark, and we're like,
shout outs to Multiverses
we're not coming
who took
back.
my money and who has not given me anything since.
Yeah, they're about to come back, but they're doing it as like, okay, this is 1.0. It's not open beta. Blah 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 blah. They're like doing the due diligence, I guess, in that way. They weren't like, oh, it's not open beta anymore. Oh, goodbye. You know.
I guess my question is, when did it become normal to cape for people who don't give a shit about you?
I don't know, man, but there's a lot of that going around.
Like, yeah, I get it. Developers are closing, but like, $40 for this. No tutorial, no third faction, no third sub-factions of that faction, which adds to an additional 2 factions. No campaign. If this build is a year old, as the CEO claims, what the fuck are you doing? And why am I the bad guy for pointing out that you're trying to cheat people for $40?
You shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Anyway, I've played Sins of a Solar Empire 2 and I'm poor for it, literally. I bought that game. It's 5 out of 10 on IGN. Check out that review. Bunch of people who have never posted on IGN before have very serious comments about what I've had to say. But I think a game should have a tutorial. I think a game should, teach you how to use it. Especially since the last version of that game that came out that wasn't DLC was 2012.
Damn.
And it seems to me that there's a certain publisher that's trying to take Epic's money and not give them the thing that they agreed to. Which was exclusivity. So you bump it up to a 1.0 release and, hey, look, it's been exclusive. Yeah, man, nobody knew about it because you haven't advertised it. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I keep seeing like I'm just kind of searching a little bit, and I'm seeing all kinds of news from October 2022, and that's game launches on Epic and early access, and like there's nothing more recent than that until
Lucas,
your
I'm telling you, go to the Epic Game
Crazy.
Store and see how far you have to scroll down before you recognize that there's an entire faction that's just not in the game. All the way at the bottom.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like
When they're advertising it as 3 races and 6 factions, right?
yeah, it's like you're in this weird intersection of like the game's a niche, and it's been in development for so long that it's like the people who care and are talking about it are already like in. And then this is happening on Epic, which is like its own sort of point of contention with the audience, right? So it makes it that more likely that it's gonna fly under the radar if you don't draw attention to it.
Yeah, to your point, my point is we used to get angry about this.
Yeah.
If it was a more visible game, I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is like, if this happened with something that was more it's like the perfect storm of like having the audience that's gonna be there no matter what, and the controversial storefront, and just like the bubble sort of stops there almost. It's like if I don't know if like you pitched this to IGN or they came to you, or
No. I'll tell you exactly what happened. They said this game is hit 1.0. We'd love for you to review it. We know you love strategy games. Anybody who knows me knows I love RTS. Whether that's StarCraft, Warcraft, Sims. Sims is one of my Sims 1 is one of my favorite RTSs. Mm-hmm. Whether that is more of a turn-based game like Civ or Stellaris, strategy games are my jam. They asked me.
Yeah. So basically, and I won't use names just for the sake of, but someone whose job it is to pay attention and notice these things noticed it, right? If that didn't happen, like, then I don't think like anyone on the consumer end. I think it just would have been like the likelihood of somebody noticing it and being like, "Yo, this is kind of fucked up." It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing like in the response to it, it's like, I don't know. It is really strange that there's not more like, hey, maybe this guy is like onto something here with this being an issue. But it's a bunch of people who probably already paid their early access dues, way ahead of time, coming after you.
Listen,
it's one of those things where it's like the community's bought in, they've been bought in forever, and the game can do no wrong because it's their thing that they like. And it's like nobody outside of that's going to give a shit. It's like when something fucked up happens in like the wrestling world, and nobody outside of that bubble draws attention to it. And so like it just gets to keep happening, until like Fox
somebody says something.
Involved. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I think Sins of the Solar Empire 2 will be a great game once it's finished. Truly. It's got strategy, it's got micro, it's got macro. It's a well-designed video game.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take the early access label off and your version is 1.2 or 1.2, I expect a finished fucking product.
Yeah.
You expect it to at least be a 1.0, right?
And it's not.
Yeah. Like you get, I think early access comes with some degree of reasonable, like, okay, you're at 1.0, but there's probably still going to be work being done on this game. But
yeah,
you expect there to be like, this is what 1.0 means. You expect that to be clear. You expect that to be like met before they hit that button.
And that's the distinction, right?
Yeah. It sounds like they just sort of hit that button and didn't tell anyone.
This feels like Stardock trying to have their cake and eat it. Where they got that sweet exclusivity money from Epic, but they don't actually want to give them a finished 1.0 product because they know most of their games' sales are on Steam. Listen, I'm not saying I don't want this game to be successful. I think it's a good video game. I think it needs more time. I don't think Ironclad is to blame. Who are the developers? But I'm also a big believer in you got to take responsibility for your choices. And if you're telling me a game is in 1.0, I expect certain things. I only address this because I feel like early access has become a way of saying, hey, we've got a build, but we're not sure it's a full game. Please beta test it for us. That you pay money for. That's fucked up.
Yeah.
You have beta testers for that. You have publishers for that. If you don't want your game reviewed, don't release it in early access, and especially don't give me a 1.2.1, or sorry, 1.2, fucking build version. And then get angry at me for reviewing it as such.
Yeah.
You tell me something's released, I'm going to have standards. And the reason I bring this up is not because I have some personal vendetta against anybody. But this is where the industry is going. Unreleased builds you play full price for. You do all the work of beta testing it for them. And then eventually you get maybe a build. We used to be angry about this. When fucking... What was the Hello Games game? I can't remember it at the top of my head.
No Man's Sky?
Yes. When that released and it didn't have a fraction of what they promised, were people happy about it?
No, they had to go on multiple social media campaigns and take forever, and a lot of people still never gave them a second chance.
Right. Is this any different?
You tell me.
You've done the bare minimum. You've told me if I scroll a certain way down the page that this thing is in, and if I scroll all the way down, it isn't. I don't know about y'all, but I've never scrolled all the way to the bottom of a games page before determining if I want to buy something.
Nah.
Do you read the reviews? Do you check the version number? Nobody does that. We look at the thing, we think this is cool, and we buy it. If you're going to sell it as a 1.0 product and then cry about how I'm ruining your 4.6 out of 5 fucking user rating, at least have the decency to sell a finished game.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to say except that I think Sins 2 will be really good when it's finished.
Yeah.
I also think Stardock is trying to pull a fast one on both Epic as a publisher, who paid money for exclusivity, it is not going to get it, and their fan base, who are lining up to defend a game that isn't done. As critics, we should demand better, and as consumers, we deserve more.
Yeah, I'm going through some Reddit stuff on this. And a lot of it's like the usual, like, IGN, blah, blah, blah. The one guy, bless this person's heart. They said exactly what you said. They released it out of early access. Blah, blah, blah. Makes it fair. They say, this is on Stardock. I don't know why they released an obviously unfinished 1.0, but that's what they did. And then the Golden Mine. If it wasn't a game we were predisposed to like, we'd absolutely be criticizing this business tactic as scammy.
That's exactly what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like...
Listen, I am not in any way...
There's hope for the kids yet.
Yes. And listen, I am not in any way against people who have an emotional attachment to Sins of the Solar Empire. I think Sins 1 is a great game. Truly. I also think that you owe your consumers a responsibility to be honest about what you're doing. If a game is 1.0, I expect it to be finished.
Cue the Captain Jean-Luc Picard thing from First Contact where he goes, "The line must be drawn here, this far, no farther."
I don't care if you put it at version 0.9.9.9.9.2.3. You hit 1.0, that shit had better be done.
Yeah.
And that's not to say you can't have bugs, you can't have balance issues, any of that. But if you promise me a game and you're not delivering on it, I don't know what the fuck is your problem. As critics, we should do more, and as consumers, we should demand more. And I think that's fair.
Yeah. All right. On that note, let's get out of here at this extremely extended edition Lord of the Rings length podcast.
We ended on a proper note. We didn't give you 15 of those motherfuckers.
That's true. That's true. And we're not going to break this in the edit. Kris is not going to break this up into 3 smaller podcasts, even though there was continuity between the whole thing, and try to sell it to you 3 times. We're not even going to sell it to you. You can have this shit for free. I hope you enjoy it. I've been your host, Brian Barnett, and if you want to check out the stuff that I'm doing on the internet, you can find me at Ribnax on Twitter and Twitch and YouTube, and at Brian Barnett, BrianBarnett on Blue Sky and Backlogged. And yeah, you can check out my preview for Cataclysmo on IGN. And God, I did some interviews for IGN Plus and stuff like that lately, but now I'm just vibing. So check me out on Twitter mostly, talking about the games that I'm playing, things like that. Lucas, where can people find you?
You can find me on social at Hokutono Lucas. You can find most of my work, including the Neurodiver review, on shacknews.com. I've got another review of a game coming out in a couple of days. And then, let's see, something cool coming up in a few more weeks after that. But until then, shacknews.com is where you're going to find me. Oh, and doing multiverses stuff on Kotaku. Mostly guidesy kind of stuff. But
fuck you.
Will be.
I was going to push that. You motherfucker.
I'm sorry.
Lucas's bag secured. Yeah, I did multiverses guide stuff for IGN, and Will and I played during that. That was fun.
I really
Buff
like
Wonder
multiverses. I'm excited for it.
Exactly. Buff Wonder Woman.
Y'all see that new gorilla ass Jason Voorhees that they? Oh man, it's so good. He's got a massive torso and little tiny legs. He's like a Bruce Timm drawing.
Nice. I respect a good Bruce Timm drawing.
Yeah.
Which is appropriate because Batman's also in this game. But anyways.
True.
Yeah. Will, where are you at?
You can find me on Twitter at BuyWillBurger. That's burger with an O, not a U. You can find me on IGN, where I've reviewed the 1.0 release of Sins of a Solar Empire 2. You can find me on IGN, where I've reviewed Rise of the Ronin. You can find me on IGN, where I've done Rise of the Ronin guides. You can find me on Nintendo Life, where I talked about Wrath Aeon of Ruin, and among other things. You can find me on Twitter, where my takes are hot and ready.
Just like the littlest Caesar himself.
And you can find me here, where I'm always correct. Brian?
Mom Jump in the chat says, all the cutscenes in this podcast have been restored. All right, you guys, get back to your jobs at Hot Topic. And then he said, Will, Get yourself down to Houston and bring some good Virginia bourbon. I keep finding good bottles from Tennessee, and I'll bring some.
I'll tell you what, Brian. If you and I are ever lucky enough to hang out in Houston, I'll bring you the best fucking liquor you've ever had in your life.
Hell yeah. I love it. Anyways, from everybody at the platformers, we hope you have a fantastic week. Stay safe out there, because until next time, we are out.
Peace!